Historic Landmarks Commission, April 12th, 2023. Order. There we go. Okay. First item is public comment. Item A, any member of the public may address the commission.
Excuse me,
for-
Mr. Chair,
Oh,
can we take roll call?
Sorry,
first?
yes, yeah. I went to the list.
You're getting ahead of yourself.
You did a Steve.
Let me go ahead and take roll call. Chair Grumbine,
Here.
Vice Chair House,
Here.
Commissioner Butler,
Here.
Commissioner Jordan is absent, Commissioner Drury,
Here.
Commissioner Ensberg,
Here.
Commissioner Lundvik,
Present.
Commissioner McClure is absent, and Commissioner Uli.
Present.
We have quorum. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, now to item A, public comment. So any member of the public may address the commission for up to 2 minutes on any subject within our jurisdiction that is not scheduled on this agenda for a public discussion. All right, so if there's any member of the public wishing to discuss an item not on our agenda today, this is the time.
Thank you, Chair Grumbine. I do have one speaker slip for Crystal Seighart. Please go ahead and,
It'll be for this one and,
yeah, that's totally fine.
okay.
Hi.
Hello.
Welcome.
Mic on?
Is it?
I'm on now?
Yeah.
Cool. Hi, everyone. Crystal Seagart, one of the founders of Healing Justice Santa Barbara. I'm going to speak on agenda item 1, too, but I just wanted to kind of emphasize that as we created the Black African American Historic Context Statement, something we're finding a roadblock in is funding to preserve some of these landmarks. And as great as it is to preserve a landmark, right, and say it's a historic landmark, if we don't have funding to continuously preserve, especially some of our Black African American landmarks, then the preservation really ends up being, what for. And so I just want to encourage some of the members of the Historic Landmark Commission. I know Robert Uli, we're working with you on St. Paul AME to secure funding, but to sort of look at different ways we can think of starting preservation funds. Maybe that sits within the Historic Landmark Commission or the City of Santa Barbara, but to start thinking about ways that we can secure funding, not just for Black African American landmarks, but for just all historic landmarks, ones that aren't as popular as some of the other city landmarks, that we can help them start to preserve, especially if there's already owners now owning some of these buildings. If we could help by having some of that preservation fund to encourage them to want to participate in the process, that would be helpful. So again, Healing Justice is always a resource, happy to support that effort, but just want to kind of put that out to the commission to see if anyone has interest of that, and if anyone has any connection to grants that we can start applying to, because we do work, Healing Justice has a grant writer that we continuously work with as well. So thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And I do not have any more speaker slips for general public comment, nor do we have any virtual participants. I did receive written correspondence from Jennifer Larson, which was distributed to the commission prior to the meeting. Back to the chair. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, on to item B, approval of the minutes of Historic Landmarks Commission meeting March 29th, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion by Commissioner Drury, second by Commissioner Uli. Under discussion, any edits, changes? All good? Okay. Doesn't look like any, so let's go on to a roll call vote.
Thank you, Chair Grumbine. I'll take the roll call vote. Commissioner Drury,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensberg,
Abstain.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Lundvik,
Yes.
Commissioner Uli,
Yes.
Vice Chair House,
Yes.
and Chair Grumbine.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, we're on to item C, announcements, requests by applicants for continuances and withdrawals, future agenda items, and appeals. All right,
Staff has no announcements at this time.
okay. Any other commissioner announcements?
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
I
Vice Chair
would
House.
just like to convey that Commissioner McClure sends his regrets that he's had to miss 2 meetings, family issues, so he should
Okay.
be back next time.
Thank you for that update. And I know Commissioner Jordan as well is going to be absent today. I need to leave by 5:30, but
Or you think so?
I think I do, but that's my fault if I'm not, so, if I'm not pushing things along, so. Any other announcements, et cetera? Okay, on to item D, subcommittee reports. So any subcommittee reports? No, okay. In that case, we've moved through things here. 1:45. We can still start with item 1. If we're ready to go. All right. So item 1 is a structure of merit designation for 236 East Coda Street. And this is a request to adopt resolution 2023-04 designating the 1920 African American Black Church a historic structure of merit. And so, to Ms. Hernandez.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Today we have for your consideration, just going to move this a little closer, the church at 236 East Coda Street. As we noted in the agenda, it was originally constructed in 1920. It was constructed as a spiritualist success church, and then in 1942 became the home of the African American Black congregation, Church of God in Christ, which is still the congregation that calls it home today. And this was one of the buildings that was identified in our African American and Black context statement under the associated themes of religion and spirituality. And the context statement also had outlined ways in which the different churches could qualify under our criteria as guidelines for us to designate the buildings. You'll see under the 2 Sanborn maps, you'll see on the 1930 Sanborn map, the site in red is known as the Spiritualist Success Church, and then in 1950 it says the Church of God in Christ. And I'm going to go through a little bit more detail of the history as we go through the criteria. The church was originally located in this Lower East Side neighborhood of Santa Barbara, which did have many African American and Black residents living on this block of Coda Street specifically, as noted in your report. The building is associated with the African American and Black community in Santa Barbara, as it was home to one of the few long-established Black congregations. In American cities across the country in the early 1900s, churches were crucial anchors for the African American and Black community. And to continue that, I'm just going to try and summarize some of the material in here as well, as I noted, that this congregation moved to the site in 1942. It was originally founded in 1938 by Bishop Cox, located 810 East Montecito Street. And in 1942, the city directories showed them at moving to 236 East Coda Street, and it was also noted in the Santa Barbara News Press article that the congregation marched praying and singing to their new home on the corner of Garden and East Coda Streets. And the building does qualify under Criterion 1, as it is associated with events that have made significant contribution to our past. And that is an association with a predominantly Black congregation as the primary location of worship for over 80 years. The church is also associated with a significant movement in the social history of the African American Black members of Santa Barbara, as religious organizations played a fundamental role in the lives of Santa Barbara's African American Black residents. Predominantly Christian churches attended to the spiritual being of their members, as well as their social, financial, educational, and cultural needs. Black churches served as gathering places, concert halls, meeting locations, and incubators of clubs and organizations, as well as businesses and support networks. And many influential civic community leaders led in these spaces as pastors and active members, and they provided respite from racial injustice and played a major role in the movement for racial equality, both local and on a national scale. And I just want to point out, this picture is a picture of the Deaconess Board from 1943 that was found in the California Eagle newspaper, which was an African American Black statewide newspaper that all the communities in the state would contribute new tidbits about our communities. And you can see the window that is still existent on the building, the little square diamond window above them. The building is also qualifies under Criterion 2, as it's an association with an individual who's played an important contribution to Santa Barbara and our African American Black community and the history of religion. It's Pastor George Brooks Jr. has been a leader in the Black community for over 40 years, and it's not uncommon for passersby not affiliated with the church to go inside, drawing by his rousing music of his bass guitar. And that was written up in 2002 in the Santa Barbara News Press. The building also qualifies under criterion 5. The small church has been an established and familiar feature of the neighborhood for over 100 years because it was just constructed in 1920. The two front entrance doors flanked by the diamond-shaped windows are physical characteristics that have been part of this streetscape and visual feature of the neighborhood since at least 1943, as seen in the Deaconess photograph. And just a note on historic integrity. The building, in 1966, I found a report that the building inspector thought it was in a state that needed to be either demolished or covered entirely in stucco. So I think we would disagree with that inspector today, but it is, that was when the building probably received the stucco coating, because you see the wood on the top section under the gable. But we did outline in the African American Black Historic Context Statement that there are some considerations for you to evaluate when looking at integrity of these rare sites, that it should contain at least some essential character defining features of the period, especially more mass, form, and rhythm, and it does still have the brackets and the windows. And because of their rarity, there is a little bit of a priority that there may be some modest degree of altered and removed original materials, and this property does meet those criteria. And that concludes my presentation, as we do think the building is significant for ethnic heritage, religion, and social history for its association with the African American Black community.
All right.
Back to
Thank
you.
you.
And I know the pastor is here and several speakers.
All right, great. We look forward to hearing from them. Okay, so if that concludes your presentation, now we'll go to, and actually, well, considering it's also part of the applicant, do we want to have the applicant speak now as part of it, and then they can speak here or up wherever they feel more comfortable? If you would like to come forward? Sure, yeah. So just double check to make sure the green light's on. I'm not sure if it's.
Yes, it's
yeah,
on.
good. Okay.
Thank you to everyone's here. We thank you for that. This is my first time trying to come into the community and ask for this building to be a historical building. And I started pastoring here in 1983. And as pastoring there, I started with a school that they had. I just had got my BA degree from UCSB, and they asked me to teach of the Black history. And I was also teaching the Bible to them at that time. And at the time, they was in need of a pastor. And I just went in to do a Bible study with them. And they just called and asked that I be their pastor during that time. And it took 2 years for me to become the pastor because the interim bishop was in the hospital and he was dying of cancer. So I had to fly to Memphis to receive it from the presiding bishop, Bishop Gerald Patterson. And so in 1985, I was able to get the approval for me to become the pastor of that church. And so for 40 years, I've been there. And with the 40 years being there, when I first came here, there was 5 Church of God in Christ here, and they all are gone except this one building is still standing. And this is a Pentecostal movement where most of the people, they come in, they're not used to the clapping of the hand and shouting and praising God. So they are taken by that and then the music. And so we have got quite a few converts just coming through. And then with the churches, we had the Interfaith Ministers line, which was the Black churches coming together. It was 7 at that time. Now we're down to 3. And then from that, we had the Vision of Hope came through with Ella Pipersburg. And also we had a conference to come here because of this church. That's when it was called the Red Lion at the time we came in and that. So we've been a part of the community here. And then our mayor, Marty Bloom, she came to a meeting and we was in prayer there. So this also brought history, and also it kind of raised the bar for us because Baba Tunde was at that meeting. We prayed for him and he won his election. So he kept coming back and saying, this is where I started as a councilman. And then from that, we just continued to praise God. And it was a television for the Channel 17, stopped by the church and asked if we'd be on Channel 17. At that time, I didn't know anything about the chair or how to work the camera. So for 2 months, I was on Channel 17. And then after the 2 months, he came and told me, if you go to the channel, they'll teach you how to work the camera. So I went in, I learned to work the camera, and I stand here today with 1,080 shows that I've done on television here in Santa Barbara. So I feel that the history here with the Pentecostal movement, it impacts this area. And the feedback I would get from different communities, they would come in, the first thing they say, are you singing, or what are you doing? I never heard anything like this before. But they loved it. So I slowed my preaching down to catch that audience there. And then, as you said, the bass draw quite a few people in. And we had a group that we was playing with. In that group, we mixed it. We had Hispanics and blacks playing together. So we had a kind of offbeat rhythm that we were playing with. So most of the people would come to hear it. And the only problem they had was trying to figure out how to clap their hands because of the beat of the music. But I think we have quite a bit of history here on Coder Street. And most people that come into the town, they'll tell them, go to that little church on the corner, and they'll help you. They'll help you get started. And sometime I'm out there just sweeping the leaves up, and somebody come and they say, we was told that this is where we come to start our life here in Santa Barbara. And so I think we are known throughout the East and everywhere where people come. And then for a while, my website was up. Right now, I'm still trying to activate it because of the technology and everything. But I think that we kind of like a cross-section of Hispanics and whites and all in the church. Many times we call and say, is it a black church? And I said, I don't know how to answer that because we had people from all ethnicity coming there. And so with that, I feel that the church have established itself in the community as one of the major churches. And I feel that we should have this as a historical landmark to keep it because so many stories have been told about people who walk by to just get a meal. And later on, I hear that they're over in France or somewhere else, and they will call back and say, my started at this little church. And so the history just all over the world where people just stop in because of the music, and from there, their life began with Christ. So I think that we should just be in the history so people, as they tell their story, and people come through Santa Barbara, and they drive their big bus by, they can stop and say, this is where a lot of people got their start. So I thank you for listening to me and hearing me, but I feel that we have really earned a space in the history of Santa Barbara. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I believe so. Okay. So would there be anyone else that would like from the applicant side to come up and say a little bit? All right. In that case, we'll move to public comment. So any member of the public wishing to comment on this item, we'll have 2 minutes if you so
Thank
choose.
you, Chair Garmine. We do have one speaker slip for Crystal Seagart.
Okay.
Oh, am I learning now? Okay. Me again. I just came here, of course, because as a member of Healing Justice, we just always show up and try to support the Black community and to just send my praises for it now coming to the commission as a structure of merit. Also learning, I'm not a historian, but as I continue to involve myself in this work, I'm learning more and more just about the contributions and the beauty that Black African Americans brought to this community and just how historic Coda and Haley are to our community. I thank HLC for continuing to support the work that the Santa Barbara Black African American Historic Context Statement has done. Because of that, this context statement, Nicole is continuing to work on preserving some of these sites. We have been able to develop an historic timeline off of it and host it at different school sites and work with school districts to get some of this curriculum into schools. We've been able to create an historic trolley tour to actually show people these historic landmarks, and we're actually doing one tomorrow. So I'm like, this is going to be a big win to talk about as we pass this area. And I'm just honored and thankful that I get to participate in this work, and that we're giving opportunity and moments for you all to shine and talk about the beauty in these buildings and what they've done for people, like praying for Babatunde before he was elected. I mean, that just touched my heart so much. So again, Healing Justice is always here to support. We care. We're going to continue to tell these stories, and thank you, HLC, for continuing to honor this work.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I do not have any more speaker slips, so turning to virtual public comment. If anyone's wishing to speak on this item, please raise your hand and we'll call on you. I do have one raised hand from Simone Ruskamp. Simone, I'm going to go ahead and send you an unmute request. And you have 2 minutes to speak.
All right.
Okay, well, greetings. I absolutely love coming to these meetings virtually and seeing the joy. I'm Simone. I'm one of the co-founders of Healing Justice with Crystal. I just wanted to echo our excitement and joy again in seeing the Church of God in Christ being celebrated in this way, and again, appreciation to Nicole, especially for making sure that the Black and African American context statement we worked on was not just a document that was shelved somewhere, but is really being used to support, affirm, and protect sites of importance to Black folks. To the pastor of Church of God in Christ, thank you so much. I hope that you had a blessed Easter. And like Crystal mentioned, it's beautiful to hear about the support that you all offered to Babatunde, the first Black council member. As some of you know, we had the pleasure of working with his widow, Miss Akiva, with the Protecting Legacies event for Black History Month. But we're just so grateful to do this work, to be in partnership with each of you. So thank you to the committee, thank you to Nicole, and to the Church of God in Christ. We're so grateful for you. Thank you for continuing to share your stories, to hold space, as we're seeing so many sites of Black history being erased or gentrified. It's even more important that you all remain and that you be supported. So if there's anything that we can do as Healing Justice, let us know. But again, thank you, and so excited about this.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I do not have any more raised hands nor any speaker slips. We did not receive any written correspondence for this item, so back to the commission. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, to the commission for discussion. And no questions, I'm assuming as well. You can ask questions if you want. All right, so,
Chair Grumbine?
yes.
I just have a question about the stucco. Is there any possibility that anywhere down the road that it might be possible for the building to be restored to how it was before they put the stucco on it? Just a question.
Yeah.
There's always that possibility. We're always open to restoration work. We don't require applicants do that, but yes, if the church would like to one day embark on a restoration, it might be something we could try and help you. Technical services for sure. Sometimes when the stucco is over a wood building, it sometimes will naturally be time to take it off because sometimes we'll start to see some problems with the stucco and rotting, but we're happy to help with that. as
Thank you.
projects
It'd
come
just be
forward.
so nice to see it as it originally was, with that detail on it. So, thank you.
Where is that building inspector now?
That's right. And actually, sort of on a related comment to that, and part of one of the questions or comments from the public as well, just so everyone sort of understands our different historic commissions have different powers and roles. I wish we had a budget, but we don't. However, that being said, I think the ideas of thinking about how it might, how one might go about getting it funded and things like grants are great. The Santa Barbara Trust for Historic Preservation, which I know that you've been doing work with as well, they do a lot of their projects via grants, state and some national. But there is potentially funding, and then it would also be City Council would be the other to bring forward because they control budgets and we don't. But we're happy to support those things that are about the restoration, especially, and preservation of structures of merit and landmarks. So we're very supportive of that. And then the other thing is also for the public's sake as well. There's also the oh my gosh, the Mills Act is the other way in which and doesn't always work great for nonprofits necessarily, but for those who do pay tax on property, and there's basically if you come up with a plan for ongoing maintenance, repairs, and restoration, that can be partially tax deductible. So, and Ms. Hernandez I'm sure going to be is happy to work with anyone on those things. So, but you have to first be a structure of merit to be able to even qualify for it. So, all right. So, any other discussion? Otherwise,
Mr. Chair, I'm happy to make a motion. Typically, though, when we think of structures of merit or landmarks, we think of the physical qualities of the location and not necessarily the invisible history connected to the physical location. And while this is a wonderful building for your congregation, it's not really a great example of fantastic architecture in the city of Santa Barbara. And so the designation will be challenging in a sense that it needs to have some outward presence. So I'm wondering, if some kind of plaque can be attached to the building that identifies the history that is being acknowledged, because it's not necessarily the architecture. It's the history of the people who have used that building over the 100 years. So I don't know if there's got to be a solution to that somehow. I'm sure, and staff, I'm sure, will help you do that. But nonetheless, it is a very important location. It's within eyeshot of here, right across the street. And so I'd make a motion to designate 236 East Coda Street a structure of merit in the city of Santa Barbara.
I will happily second that motion.
all right. Great. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Happy motion.
Happy motion and a happy second. All right. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Thank you, Chair Grumbine. I'll take the roll call vote. Commissioner Drury,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Lundvik,
Yes.
Commissioner Uli,
Yes.
Vice Chair House,
Yes.
and Chair Grumbine.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
All right, great. And so, nice job. And actually, if you want to come forward, and we have a resolution of designation as structure of merit for you, so. Oh, here we go. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry. I have a quick question.
Sure.
So there's structure of merit and then there's historic, right? Historic designated landmark?
Yep.
So those are two different. So I was hearing you, Commissioner Uli, is it that if it's a structure of merit, then it doesn't get a designated plaque? Or like what's the difference, just to understand it more?
Through the chair, landmarks get a plaque, but that doesn't mean a structure of merit can't have a plaque.
Okay, okay. And then
And-
landmarks are, landmarks are acknowledged by the city council, right? But structure of merits just go through HOC.
That's right, and we recommend to city council for all landmarks.
Okay.
So, but then it goes to city council, and city council has a choice whether they designate a landmark or not.
Okay.
So we're the recommending body, they're the approving body on historic structures of merit, we're the recommending and approving body.
Okay, and that's kind of why you were recommending a little restoration, so it goes through the approval process easier at the city?
No, I was just suggesting that when it's a structure of merit based on its architecture, someone driving down the street can see the architecture. But when it's a structure of merit based on the history of people and the use of the building by people, you can't see those people.
Right.
So there should be something on the building that tells the person seeing the building why it's designated.
It's
Okay.
important and why. So
Okay.
it's just that basically 9% of all the structures of merit that we designate are for, because it was, famous architect or a famous building, or a high level of this or that. It's on the physical architecture or the architect that did it. But there's plenty across the nation and plenty even in Santa Barbara, well, not plenty, but a good handful that are designated like this one is for what actually happened there. And which is they're all different reasons to be designated, but this is, and I think that strikes at Commissioner Uli's thing of maybe tell people about it so that they also can appreciate it.
Oh, okay. Thank you for the information. This was nice. City council doesn't let you ask questions.
Did you hear that, public? We're the nice commission. We often get written up as the mean commission. So, thank you.
Well, we still have some work to be done. Let's find out how that plays out.
The day might end differently. Okay, well, we are on to now item 2. So this is another structure of merit designation for 427 East Mitchell-Torrena Street, D. This is a request to adopt Resolution 2023-05, designating the 1919 Craftsman-style bungalow an integral part of Bungalow Court, a historic structure of merit. All right, so to Ms. Hernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. This is the wrong, there we go. We're seeing quite a diverse range of buildings today in front of you. This building is part of a bungalow court designed in 1919 in the Craftsman style. And what I found and was surprised to find, actually, I knew it was just part of a bungalow court of 4 buildings that face each other in the inner circle of the, kind of when you go down the alley, you can get to this little inner circle of 4 mirroring bungalow buildings. But when I've looked on this 1930 Sanborn map, this is all one parcel with actually 4 bungalow court in the middle, surrounded by mimicking bungalows both on Olive and Mitchell-Torrena. And here's the site today. They're all individual parcels, and they were divided sometime after 1945, because I found a permit in 1945 that said there were still 10 buildings, a garage, and a duplex on the site. But they all still contain most of their character-defining features. So it's really cool when you just kind of step back and you realize that you have this really amazing collection of 1919 bungalows. Anyway, so there's some of the photos of the bungalow court. It's really hard to photograph any of the buildings together so you can see how they relate to each other. But this is from the alley going into the set of 4 that mirror each other across the way. And this is D right here, who's applying for the designation. This is one of the 4. And they also have these similar characteristics, these big knee brackets, this bump out with a triptych of windows. They have like these pyramid style piers, and then the posts come up from there in that chunky Craftsman style. And they also have these decorative vents under the eave here, under the big gable, and almost every single one of them has all of those features. And they also have front doors with 10 lights in the upper sash. So it's and here's a view of it coming down as you're looking towards Mitchell-Torrena, coming down the path through the middle of the court. And here's 2 of the buildings. These are facing Olive Street, and you see all these character features, the brackets, the decorative venting, the piers, the posts, and the triptychs of windows. And here's 2 facing Mitchell-Torrena. And there's the ones on Mitchell-Torrena have a little more variety, maybe because it was more of a front-facing street. But the building is part of a early 20th century court, and early 20th century bungalow courts are really special and unique to Southern California. Pasadena was the birthplace of the bungalow court, which is a form of multifamily housing. As we've seen we have about 20 in Santa Barbara that we have found that qualify as historic. And they all have this common landscaped courtyard and driveway. The first one we saw in Pasadena was in 1909, and they continued to be developed in Southern California until about 1942. They evolved as transient seasonal use to permanent residences and appear in many architectural styles, such as the Craftsman in this one, but we have several in Santa Barbara in the Spanish Colonial Revival style, and there's some even in Art Deco styles, and there's a variety of courts all through the California. Some have driveways up the center, some have more formal landscaping, and they were a regional type of low-density multifamily housing combining individual privacy of a single-family residence with shared community space. The owners marketed the houses in the courts to people who wanted the amenities of a single-family home without the high cost, and each family in the court had their own house and garden, and residents shared the upkeep of the land. And this is also significant, not only as part of the bungalow court, but for the Craftsman style, which is one of the styles in our style guide adopted by HLC and City Council as important styles to our community. And the Craftsman style house really helped fulfill many Americans' wish to own their own home, with climate and economic opportunities drawing so many people westward in the early 1900s. The Craftsman-style bungalows sprang up rapidly as they were typically sent in kits. The Ready Cut Bungalow Company estimated it shipped over 40,000 Craftsman bungalow kits to Southern California alone from 1910 to 1920. Some of them were only about $650. And what is so wonderful about them is you could really specify all these unique details that each one of them has. And almost every Craftsman style we've looked at as a team has some unique element that each owner put into the building. This one really has the unique knee brackets that are identified in our guidelines, as well as those wide taper columns and posts. It has the really unique decorative vents under the gable, the divided lights in the top portion of the door, really bringing the light in. And all of them have these wonderful front porches. So this 1919 Craftsman house constructed as part of the court, the bungalow court retains enough integrity to meet criterion 3 of the Santa Barbara Municipal Code. And that is the summary of the report. And the
Thank you
owner
very
is
much.
here. The owner.
All right. And would the owner like to come forward and say anything or say some words? Or you don't have to, but if you want to, you can. If you want to talk about how great your house is, you can. This is yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, no, I think so.
Okay, you're good? Okay, so in that case, let's open public comment. Any member of the public wanting to address the commission on this item? If you're in the room, just fill out a speaker slip or just come to the podium. Do we have any?
Thank you, Chair Grumbine. I currently do not have any speaker slips. As of right now, we also do not have any virtual participants. And then we did receive written correspondence from Steve Dowdy of the Pearl Chase Society, which was distributed to the commission prior to the meeting. With that, I'll turn it back to you. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, to the commission for discussion, questions?
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
Mr. Chair.
I heard Vice Chair House first, and then we'll go Commissioner Drury.
That guy. I'm sorry if I missed it in my quick reading of the report, but are any of the other 4 bungalows or any of the larger grouping designated?
They are not. They're on the, some were identified and put on the inventory, and some I really learned more about during writing this report. This owner knew they were on the inventory and asked to be elevated to structure of merit, but it's easier when it's all one property because we can designate the whole property at once. But we had another court on Figueroa Street that was, I don't know if you remember, they were part of the big development that was going behind them. And we did several of those one by one because they're all individually owned as well. We did 3 of them. But it is harder when they're all individually owned to get them all designated together, because it'd be nice to recognize their cohesion
Well, maybe
and
this will
protect it.
be the beginning of something.
Right, maybe they can they can spread the word.
That's right. All right, Commissioner Drury?
That was my question.
Oh, okay. All right. Any other questions? And any comments? Let's fold into comments. Everyone likes it?
Yes.
All right. That made it easy. All right, does someone want to make a motion?
Mr. Chair, I will do that. What's the wording again? I forget. To
All right, it's a,
approve a resolution to designate as a structure of merit. 236
Okay,
East.
hold on, sorry.
427 East Mitchell, Trina Street.
yeah.
Number D.
Second.
All right, motion by Vice Chair House, second by Commissioner Butler. Under discussion, any discussion? All right, roll call vote, please.
Thank you. I'll take the roll call vote. Commissioner Butler?
Yes.
Commissioner Lundvik?
Yes.
Commissioner Uli?
Yes.
Commissioner Drury?
Yes.
Commissioner Ensberg?
Yes.
Vice Chair House?
Yes.
And Chair Grumbine.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
All right. Do you want to come on up and receive your resolution of designation as a structure of merit?
Can't get out of it this time.
All right. Congratulations. Congratulations. Yeah, lovely house. All right. We are on to item 3. Let's see. Yeah, we're only 5 minutes behind, so 820 Sema Linda Lane. This is a request to adopt Resolution 2023-06, designating the 1929 Spanish Colonial Revival House by Carlton Winslow, FAIA, a historic structure of merit. So with that, Ms. Hernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commission. This is another completely different sort of site than what we've seen earlier today. This is a house constructed in 1926 originally by Carlton Winslow, FAIA. The original cottage was really rather small. We have the plans. And then he came back in 1929 and redesigned it in a much larger version, and that is the version you see today. We have those drawings. So 1929 would be the period of significance and house we're looking at in the Spanish Colonial Revival style. So the house was actually built as a larger part of the Billings estate. And so this is a map of the Billings estate. And the original estate was built in 1925 after Billings's first house was demolished in the earthquake. And so his original house is the big one in the center. And then these were his guest cottages along Sema Linda Lane. And then he had 3 more over here on Remetto Road. And this is a modern map of the Sema Linda Lane cottages. Here's the old estate, which is no longer intact. And then here's 820 Sema Linda. And this is 841 Sema Linda Lane, which we designated several years ago. And this is a picture of 840 Sema Linda that has some of the same features as this one. They were all designed by Carlton Winslow. And here's the original drawings for this 1929 version of the house, and you can see this the major elements still remain, like this really expressive pointed arch chimney. They have an octagon tower in the middle. They have this really great dormer with a fan light over the door, and the big columns on either side of the portico, as well as all the beautiful divided light casement windows. So this building does qualify with its association with Cornelius Kingsley Garrison Billings, founder of Union Carbide Company, which is a chemical company that is still actually a chemical company today. And it made him one of the wealthiest people in the United States. And he was there was sort of a sort of mass movement of many of the wealthiest people in the United States moving to this area due to our weather and beauty, and they called them the ruling echelons of the millionaire migration. Were dubbed the Hill Barons. I quoted that from Fermina Murray's Historic Structures Report, which she wrote in I think it was 2003 on this building, which was why it was added to the inventory, and now the new owners want to elevate it to the structure merit status. So it is in the Spanish Colonial Revival style, which is one of the keys to Santa Barbara's identity, as most of our planning practices urged all our architecture to move in that direction and has all the character-defining features of the Spanish colonial revival style, with the terracotta tile roofs, the smooth stucco walls, the expressive front portico with the fan light and the dormer, and casement-divided lights, the pointed chimney tower, and the interplay of masts and volumes. And it was a piece of Carlton Winslow's. And Carlton Winslow is really significant in architecture in Southern California and Santa Barbara and the nation, really. He worked for Bertram Goodhue, who, as we know, helped kickstart the Spanish style with his designs for the Panama California Expo in San Diego in 1915-16. And Carlton Winslow was part of his firm, working for the offices in New York City at Cram, Goodhue, and Ferguson, and served as the firm's representative in the 1915 San Diego Panama California Exposition. He is credited for the Spanish colonial style for representing the American buildings at the exposition, and brought him widespread recognition and commendation for his work. And this is just another one of his Santa Barbara buildings in this picture that shows the nursing building that was designated structure of merit a few years ago across from Cottage Hospital. But also some of his diverse work is he also was the editor of our small house design book from 1924, of featuring high quality small houses. So in conclusion, the 1929 house, constructed as part of the Billings estate, retains enough integrity to meet criterion 2 and 3 of the Santa Barbara Municipal Code. That concludes my presentation.
Great, thank you. All right, and is the homeowners, do they want to say anything? Sure. Yeah. All right, come on up. If you could introduce yourselves and.
My name is John Carpenter, and this is my wife, Katie Carpenter, and my daughter, Charlotte Carpenter. And we're just really excited for your consideration to designate our house as a structure of merit. We're kind of freaks, and we loved old things, and we
You're in good company.
Our house in Los Angeles was built in 1928, and Katie actually came to Santa Barbara Courthouse, and I think chased down the groundsman to get the paint samples from the courthouse so we could copy them in our house. And so we're. Your research on the house is really interesting. Now I know why we have a walk-in safe underneath because it was empty, unfortunately. But it's the history of the house is really unique. That a man like Billingsley would choose Carlton Winslow to design the house, and we're really excited to maintain it and keep it for Santa Barbara's history. So, thank you.
Great. Thank you. Yeah. Very much. And we did tour it, was it last year?
Yeah.
Okay. That was
Part of a project that
Yeah.
I think is coming back soon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, great. Thank you. All right. Okay. So now we'll go to public comment. Any member of the public in the room wishing to comment on this, please come forward, and you'll have to fill out a speaker slip too if you haven't already.
Thank you, Chair Grumbine. Currently do not have any speaker slips. We also do not have any virtual participants, and then we did not receive any written correspondence. So back to the commission.
All right. Okay, so to the commission for questions, discussion. Any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Okay.
But I think it's an extraordinary example of Winslow's work. And, while we have some, we don't have many. And this is an excellent example of his work. I would even encourage you to bump it up to a landmark status and not just stop at structure of merit. But if there's no other comment, Mr. Chair, I would move that we adopt Resolution 2023-06, designating 820 Similinda Lane as a structure of merit in the city of Santa Barbara.
I'll second.
All right. Good job. Before Vice Chair House. All right, Commissioner Ensberg, seconding it. Under discussion, any discussion? All right. All right, roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Chair Grumbine. I'll take the roll call vote. Commissioner Lundvik,
Yes.
Commissioner Uli,
Yes.
Commissioner Drury,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Vice Chair House,
Yes.
and Chair Grumbine.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
All right. Congratulations. Come on up. All right. Come collect your structure of merit and take care of it well.
Congratulations.
Good job. Congratulations. All right. Okay. We are now on to item 4. So, and we're still 5 minutes late, but we'll keep moving. Review after final approval. This is for 414 Chapala Street. So, located in EPV, District Part 1, the project is adjacent to 14 West Gutierrez Street, historic structure of merit. Proposal to demolish an existing one-story, 3,500 square foot commercial building and construct a new 4-story mixed-use development with 2,700 square feet of commercial area, 21 rental units on a 14,900 square foot parcel. The residential component is being developed under the AUD program and proposes a unit mix comprising of 15 one-bedroom units, 1 two-bedroom unit, 2 one-bedroom townhomes, and 3 two-bedroom townhomes with an average unit size of 844 square feet. There will be a total of 25 parking spaces located within a ground floor garage. The project is within the commercial high residential priority overlay. And this is for approval of review after final requested for revised garage entry, window and door details, window colors, tile wall scuppers, southern wall at property line, and backflow preventer location and landscaping. Project must demonstrate substantial conformance with the plans that received project design approval on November 2nd, 2016. All right, so welcome. If you could introduce yourselves for the record, and then do we have any staff comments or?
No staff comments at this time, but we did receive a request from Vice Chair House to have the project design approval plans available to compare, and they are.
Okay, great.
And Chair Grumbine?
Yes.
I just want to let you know that I did review the tapes so that I could participate in the discussion.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so, yeah, with that, if you will also just walk us through, like I'm sure you're going to do, all the changes that are being requested.
Okay, fantastic.
Excuse me,
Oh, yeah,
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner
are there minutes? Or should we?
I think this is considered a new project because it's a review after.
Oh, okay.
I don't think you have to have seen the tape.
You can compare it to what was approved and then what they're asking for.
If it's not necessary.
Revised approval. Is it easy enough to pull up the minutes and see if there's anything of importance? Okay, we'll get those up.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. So with that, if you can introduce yourselves for the record and.
Hi there, Laura Bernard and Christine Perrone from the Cornell Collective.
Jessica Harlan with Barefoot Design.
Okay.
And I'm just going to jump in. This is Laura's first time presenting. Be very nice to her. She's very nervous.
In that case.
Thank you, Christine.
All right. Well, why don't you walk us through?
Did you want to go through, it looks like we've got minutes up. Did you
Oh,
wanna
great.
go through
Okay,
those
yeah, let's do
first?
that.
Yeah.
Okay, so the motion was project design approval with the following comments. Commission finds the project qualifies for exemption from further environmental review under CEQA guidelines based on the city staff analysis and CEQA certificate of determination on file for this project. 2, use the faux chimneys as part of the architecture, particularly breaking the roof line on the elevations and locate flush with the exterior walls. Action was by Lavoie, second was by Mahan, 600. Drury, Schallenberger, wow, it goes back in Schallenberger, and Vena were absent. Motion carried. So that was it.
In the last century.
Yeah.
And that was project design approval, not our final.
Yeah, that
Obviously,
wasn't
we've had
final, yeah.
And, resolve those issues.
Yeah. Normally, we don't say things like, oh, figure it out with the chimney. Okay, great.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So as we just covered, we're here with a couple items that have changed that we wanted to bring to you for your review. First off, I'd like to talk about the change to the garage entry. So on the right here are the drawings from our HLC final approval. And then on the left, I'll scan over there, is the existing as-built condition. So we had a head height issue here with this arch. So we have revised it to be flat with corbels. We also had some corbels. Let me go ahead and zoom out here. We had corbels here at the entry opening to the stairwell that were removed. And then we, for the scuppers, had a detail with a clay tile shroud, and they do not have the clay tile shroud on them. We can go ahead and scan down to the picture here, but we think, they look all right. And I realized that in my nervousness and haste, I didn't even talk about where this is, so my apologies. This is 414 Chapala. It's down a little bit off the corner of Chapala and Gutierrez. Gutierrez is page right as you're facing this photo here. So that's the garage entryway we just were talking about, and the eliminated corbels. Here is where the clay tile shroud was supposed to be. And then I think one of the main things that Christine and I talked about with this project is some of the windows and doors did not get a simulated divided light mullion. They just had the break between the two panes of glass. So we did work with the owner and the contractor to get them to install some retrofit mullions. I brought a little sample here, which I guess I can pass around. We were really concerned about making sure that they were mitered correctly and came out right. And I've got some pictures here to show what we think was a pretty effective implementation of this. I think this one here is probably a good example of showing how they turned out. So we were really happy with that change and felt like it would appropriately addressed that issue. The other thing that you'll see here is the window color. Our original palette had two different shades of a slate blue and country blue, I believe. And, throughout the design evolution, we've changed it just to a dark bronze. Let's see here. Okay, I think the one final thing that I will address as well is the property line. So this is the elevation. The south elevation here has not yet been plastered. The adjacent property is currently in escrow, and so once that's all settled, they will be going back and plastering that wall. And then, Jess, I can kind of hand it over to you to talk. So I'll just say that during construction, the backflows were much bigger than we originally had planned for. So they were supposed to be going in this location, but there just wasn't space, so they ended up over here, and we have adjusted our landscaping accordingly. Here are a couple photos. And then I can go to your plans.
Yeah, the transformer, I think, is bigger too. Everything was bigger. So in order to not have to demo the hardscape and maintain that, we are utilizing potted, metal troughs. And if you go to the planting page sheet, it has a, which can be moved for access. And are planted with the approved planting palette that we'd had in that area, the Dianella, so that it's a 2-foot plant on a 2-foot riser, so it gives about 4 foot of screening. It's an evergreen, doesn't die back, and trying to keep the existing plant palette that was approved, maintain some screening, but also provide access by having it be a movable feature that that isn't set in place so that we don't demolish or, in order to access, create issues where the plant material gets trampled. So that's my only change is based on the utilities.
Yeah, go back to that photo just in case that helps, but I think that that's it. That concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so that concludes the presentation. We'll go to public comment. Any member of the public in the room wishing to comment? I see someone coming up.
Thank you, Chair Grunwein. Looks like we have one in-person commenter.
All right, welcome. If you could introduce yourself for the record.
Okay, Neil Ablett. I have the property at 14 West Gutierrez Street, and I appreciate what they're doing to improve the front of 414 Chapala. Appreciate the attention on the front of the building, but I'm a little concerned about our side, which is the back of the building. Now, some things fall through the crack, and in this case, the crack is 10 inches wide and 14 feet tall. It's a space between the buildings that in the past we had many, or you had many managers' soups for the project kept turning over, and I kept getting promises of something called a vertical flashing between walls. This area is where the employees, it's a dry cleaning business with about 50 employees there that go outside and have their picnics or their breaks, and they're sitting next to this space between the buildings that is conducive to, it's full of junk, to tell you the truth. It was never removed. It was always, it's going to happen, it's going to happen. The material's on back order, and then they got a new soup. At any rate, I just thought this might be an opportunity, not a complaint, but an opportunity to maybe look at the back of the building too. And if we could this time, we started this, I think, in 2016, actually get that flashing between the walls. At one time it was going to be tile, at one time it was going to be wood, and most recent was the flashing and be painted the same color. It just looks a lot nicer for the employees. By the way, I like to be a good neighbor, and I always like to point out that as soon as people moved into that building, the lady in 307, one of the top ones there, beautiful building, calls and says, you know, there's a broken bottle on the top of your building. It doesn't look very nice. Would you get up there and clean it up? Which I did. And as I was up there, I looked down at that crack between, and there's a lot of irony here. We're doing our part. Please do your part. And good luck with what you're dealing with here with this group.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Ablett did bring that to our attention, sent us photos, and Laura has reached out to the owner who said they'd be addressing it. It's the gap between our building and the adjacent building. It's a seismic gap, and the brake metal never got put in properly. So we
Okay.
will be addressing that.
Great. Thank you. All right. Any other
Thank you.
public comment?
We do not have any more speaker slips nor virtual attendees, and we did not receive any written correspondence. So back to the commission.
All right. All right, to the commission for questions. We'll start with questions. All right, Commissioner Lenvik,
I have a
see your
question.
mic go on.
You mentioned in your presentation that the south wall was intended to be finished at some point in time, later, going back to it later to plaster the wall. What's the anticipated later?
We spoke with the a pending new owner before the new year. And it was the building, it was still in escrow. So he was obviously not in a position to let us on, the contractor on site. So we're waiting on that escrow. I don't have a date yet, but that's kind of the last communication we had. And so the intention is to, once we have an owner who is in a position to allow access, we will be taking care of it.
Say that again. The current owner would not allow you access?
Because of the pending sale. Because of the escrow issue, there was concerns, and this ended up in a no man's land of not getting done. So that's why we decided to go ahead and come to you with everything else, knowing that this is still pending.
Okay, other questions?
Well, no, I'll have comments later.
Okay, I have a question. Can you zoom in on the scupper detail? Maybe even a touch more. Oh, there we go. Okay, great. So has there been any consideration for any way of, or I guess the first question is, about how far does it project?
Just a couple inches, yeah.
Okay.
And we can look at ways to dress them. We did want to get your thoughts on that.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask if you looked at like doing a square clay tile sleeve or anything, or even just a half round or a round that, not to put a square scupper in a round hole, but okay. Just wondering if you had, okay. Any other questions?
I have a question for staff.
Yeah.
Is there an occupancy permit on this building?
I don't know the answer to that question off the top of my head. I can try to contact Allison DeBusk.
Why would they have come back to us if they didn't have to?
I can answer that question.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. House.
I confess I was the person that reported this as a violation. What was very obvious to me was that half the windows on the building had simulated divided light cut-ups on them, and half the windows, mostly on the ground floor, had internal grids. And I thought, now, how could that have happened? How could the contractor have ordered two different types of windows? So anyway, I reported that. The other things that I mentioned in my complaint was that the garage, all the lights are very obvious, and that's why I requested the plans, so I could look at the approved electrical and see if those were as approved. And the other thing is, on that side of the building where the concrete block wall is not plastered, there are a lot of vents that might be overflows from patios or something, but they're all shiny stainless steel, which I thought, that's a strange thing. I can't imagine HLC approved those. I was not on HLC at the time this building was reviewed. So, you know, at the time I submitted the violation, it was to Ted Hamilton, who was the HLC staff at the time, and he and the inspector went out and confirmed that some of these things were not according to the plans, and he assured me it would not get its C of O until these things were corrected. Next thing I know, there's signage on the building, there's cars parked in the garage, and Ted was shocked to hear that it got its C of O. So that answers your question. It did get a C of O.
I appreciate the owner and the architect coming back. They could have thumbed their nose at us on this issue, I assume.
We have HLC police.
You have a hammer.
Yeah. Now we're armed and dangerous.
Were the garage lights as approved?
I have not reviewed the plans.
Okay.
As, staff said that the plans are here to.
Another example of why we want to see these garages really examined closely and.
Especially ones that slope up a little bit.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, yes.
If I may speak, not here today, but we will be coming back to you. They're having some security issues. They'd like to put in a gate at the garage, which I expect will help mitigate the issue with the visibility of the lights as well. We're expecting it to be a full height gate, so just FYI.
So they've caught me parking in the garage, apparently.
All right.
Chair
Commissioner
Gumbo,
Ensberg?
yes, I have a question. Could you talk a little bit about the change in the door and window color? You mentioned that it was a blue of some sort before, and then it changed to be this dark color. Could you talk about that, please?
Yes, this was owner-driven. They felt they wanted the dark bronze as a more kind of quiet, simpler color, and we accepted it at the time versus the blues. Yeah.
All right. Any other questions?
Pardon me, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
We do have a question from Charles McClure, who submitted his questions and comments for today's projects via memo that was distributed to the commission prior to this hearing. His question is, can you please paint the backflow equipment and other utility boxes flat black or flat very dark green?
Yeah.
I don't know if we can paint the fire backflow. I'd have to look into that. Maybe Christine does know. I don't think we can. Whoops. And this one, sorry.
No.
Don't we all?
If you want to zoom in, you can just press the Z key and draw a marquee around what you want to zoom into.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Much appreciated.
There you go.
All right. And this one, the irrigation.
Irrigation's bronze, and we'll just patina out.
This is true.
So we can paint it, but I think that it'll become more natural in the background, just with the natural patina.
I'm guessing the issue is with the
Yeah,
red,
with
which is
the-
not.
With
so
the
much
red,
an
white,
option.
and blue
Yeah.
fire hydrant.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and that, you just don't know whether that can be painted or not? Or what colors that can be painted?
Yeah, I can look into options, but yeah, I will have to look into that.
Okay.
I assume the left-hand one is not theirs. Is that true? There are two backflow devices there, control devices. The right one, I think, is yours for your building, but is the left one for your building as well?
They're on the same property.
Yes. That's what's happening, what we're experiencing now. The domestic water is getting backflow valves this size. So that is I haven't looked into it, but yes, I would expect that's fire and domestic. So watch for that. I sure am.
Okay, any other questions?
And one final interruption, Mr. Chair, to the rest of the board. If you want to look at what was approved for the garage lighting, the project design approval plans are available.
Okay, let's take a quick look at that since we're here. And quick look in the 180
Yeah,
page
so
set.
this is going to be a test to my, yeah, and this is PDA. Sorry.
No.
Should have started at the end. Okay. All right. Okay, here we go. Thought I learned my. Okay, so this is, where's our tag on this?
Fixture P1A or something?
There we go.
38 of
Thank you.
them.
And let's see what that is. Strip light with dimming, unless anyone happens to know that exact Lithonia fixture.
Well, that's, yeah, a fluorescent strip light, I'm guessing, so I think that's
Yeah.
what got installed.
Yep. I think Commissioner Drury was on HLC at the time, so we'll blame him.
Yeah,
What
but he was
does
out.
that say? Is strip light with
I think I was
what?
on there too.
Fluorescent too.
With what? Dimming. Huh.
All right. All right, any other questions? It's okay. I think I was on there too, so I'm the only ones that are on currently. Okay, if there's no other questions, let's go into comments. So let's make sure we especially comment on the revised garage entry, window and door details, window colors, tile wall scuppers, southern wall at property line, and backflow preventer.
Can you?
And landscaping, sorry.
Can you zoom in on that garage opening, please? Is that all plaster or all wood, that header in the bracket?
It's all plastered.
It's all plaster.
Well, and actually, maybe we can just discuss these items one at a time.
Well, I think that, at the minimum, that header and bracket ought to be painted a brown color to match the other structural members that are on the building up at the exterior decks or whatever. You know, I think it deserves to be painted color to represent more beam and bracket, and possibly even have an engaged column, wood column or something, 2 or 3 inches, 4 inches deep, so that it kind of, that may not be critical, but I certainly think you ought to paint that. And I think it would look a little better. That is the minimum height that you needed.
I would have to confirm that. We try not to do things to exact minimums, but it's close to it, I believe.
What's that sign say?
Low clearance.
Doesn't tell you the height.
8 foot 11.
Which is probably to the bottom of
8
that
foot.
sign.
So that would be the bottom of that sign would be the height mandated by accessibility, I assume, a van.
18. Correct.
Yeah. right. Well, I think my comment regarding that garage is that at least the implied beam and bracket need to be painted. That's just my opinion.
Okay. Any other comments on the garage entry?
I would agree with Commissioner Lenvik that that makes sense to paint it brown. I don't think it needs columns, but I think that painting it brown makes good sense.
I would agree with that.
That
I
makes
would
sense
also
to me, too.
agree.
Okay, that's sounding like pretty consistent. Oh, yeah.
Did you mention that there's plans to put a gate or was a roll-up or some sort of garage, what do you want to call it ever?
Yes, we need to look into whether or not we have the head height clearance to do a coiling gate, or if it needs to be a bi-part swing, because we are pretty tight to the lid there.
Which will come back as a
Yeah, you'll have
new
to,
application.
yeah, because that'll change the whole, okay, thanks.
One question, Chair Grumbine. Is there any option to, since that minimum height is quite a bit lower, is there any way that, or an opportunity to better screen that lighting somehow? Since your height looks like about 18 inches or so below where that beam is.
I guess that would be then sort of rolling into a question of shroud or other things for that. Is that,
Yeah, I can share one of the issues with the arch was that it needs to be the minimum 8'2" for, I believe it's a 14-foot width. And so the challenge is if we start to pull everything, I don't know if you were speaking about just adding a shroud in the middle, but the corbels, I believe, are set to that minimum. And I would have to check where the 14-foot dimension hits, but if I remember correctly, that was part of the design process.
Mr. Chair, I would opine on that issue that I think with the original arched opening, the fluorescent lights would be just as noticeable. And so, you know, since the lights are as approved, I don't think there's any issue there. And so I think.
No, there is probably no issue, but there is a concern that I think the architect may want to take back to the owner, that maybe they shroud those light fixtures for 3 or 4 back.
It could.
So that you aren't looking in and looking at the tubes or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, a shroud that would, not to cover the whole fixture, but just on the leading edge might be a nice thing to maybe suggest, and we could certainly appreciate that happening.
Yeah.
Mr.
okay?
Chair?
Yep. Commissioner Drury.
So is there some question as to whether you can put a gate?
No, just to be clear, the gate is not part of the scope of this review. At
Right.
some point, it will come back to you.
Okay, yes, I would encourage that. I think it would tie the architecture both sides of the access. Thank you.
All right. Okay, anything else on the garage entry before we move on? Okay, let's go on to window and door details. So that was with the added,
Mr. Chair, I think that this is the
License.
appropriate solution, and I hope this isn't construed as being mean to the applicant, but these are muntins, not mullions.
That's true. I actually was just looking at that this morning and then proceeded to botch it, so thank you for pointing that out.
That's
But-
the first time.
it's
You get
a pass.
today.
Yeah.
That's it.
No,
Mulligan?
Yeah.
no, this is a much improved thing, and I noticed that same thing too, but I didn't turn anyone in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Nice Guy.
All right, any other window and door details discussion? Everyone good?
Chair Grumbine, did you want to talk about color as part of this, or do you want to?
Yeah, well, I think we could talk about colors as part of it, because that was, I guess window colors is the next one, but yeah. Okay, so let's talk about colors now, window colors.
Yes, I have can you go to the, yes, this, I'm really concerned about the color. I'm not that anything can be done about it at this point, I suspect, but I think the color is extremely important, and I think one of the things that I'm seeing a lot of, and you can see right here, that when we have these very dark glass to meet Title 24, and then you have a dark muntin and frame, you basically just get a big black hole. And you lose the detail, a lot of the detail of the, not only, transparency into the space with a lighter, a clearer glass that might still meet the Title 24, but also the color that enlivens the structure and makes it more, to me, more of a Santa Barbara style. So, you know, I would like to just highlight that it is important to, you know, so much we remember, you know, Santa Barbara blue, the turquoises and the blues and even other colors as well. But when we're having this, I think, trend towards black that is, just makes the building, I don't think, quite as playful and fun as it could be if it were the color. So I am disappointed to see that very important decision was changed without getting further input about it. So.
I assume that ground floor is mixed-use commercial. It's not occupied yet.
So actually, I think as of like a month or so ago, so there's one space here,
Mhm.
2, and then 3. And I believe that this one, this was the last unoccupied, and I think
Yep.
that they just moved in.
My thought is that over time, the darkening is probably applied as opposed to, you know, built into the glass. I mean,
There's no film or anything on that glass. That's just
the nature of it, huh?
yeah.
I agree with you, but I'm not sure that dark blue would have been any better from the standpoint of visualizing a difference.
Well, through the chair, I would say that there, you know, more contrast. Yes, you could have had a very dark blue and it could have looked maybe the same, but I think the point is that I'm trying to say is that having that detail of the muntins and in contrast to the glass is really an important element. And also having a more clearer glass allows you to experience, you know, whatever's going on. If it's a retail store, whatever it is, you're able to experience what's going on and it enlivens the street. So I think that this, you know, dark on dark
And it was what we had approved, and I think that was probably, my guess is probably part of the discussion at the time, was
Yeah.
giving it some color, because it doesn't have awnings, it doesn't have other things that might add that extra splash of color, so.
Yes, so I just wanted to, again, it's done.
Yeah.
But, you know, just to kind of put that on record and for people to think about it as we move forward, because it does bother me driving around and just seeing these, you know, just dark
Like the model,
squares. you know,
it's like
just-
the Model T, you can have any color you want as long as it's black.
So
Okay.
anyway.
Yep, all right, noted.
you.
All right, any other notes on colors? Otherwise, we'll move on to tile wall scuppers. All right, tile wall scuppers. So how about the idea of something that covers it in some way as a clay tile thing?
Well, the interesting thing is that the polished stainless steel things on the side of the building are an appropriate shape. So if there's something like that in terracotta, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, but I believe those are copper.
No, they're shiny stainless steel. Maybe they were supposed to be copper.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you have, can we actually go to that concrete side? Is that the side you're talking about?
Yeah. Yeah, zoom in the middle section there.
On the upper level?
Yeah. Yeah, zoom in closer.
Oh, yeah, to the bottom, right,
vents.
by the umbrella there.
Those are
Yeah,
vents.
and up higher too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought you meant something else.
Yeah.
Okay.
The infamous dryer vent. Or what?
Yeah, but if it was copper, it would actually probably not
Roof
be
deck
bad.
overflows
We
or
can-
something.
Okay, so, but to the scuppers on the front, does other commissioners feel similarly of some sort of a clay sleeve or?
I do feel similarly. These you barely notice. You know, it seems like the intent was to have a statement there of some kind, and it needs to be more appropriately detailed.
Okay.
Chair Grumbrand, I would agree with that strongly.
All right. And no black clay sleeve. All right, on to southern wall at property line. So, it sounded like we all just want it plastered.
Oh, Mr. Chair?
Yep.
I'm concerned that that we don't know it'll ever get done. If we're waiting for an agreeable adjoining neighbor, and I don't know how they can solve the problem without getting on the adjoining property. I mean, we're kind of trapped. But I think that the least that could be done is that could be slurry coated or painted in a white paint that would at least, eliminate the attraction that your eye has to go to that block wall.
Yeah, I mean, but don't they still need to get access to the side to paint it?
Now you could do it with rollers on.
Yeah, you could roll that down to the top.
Drones?
You can roll it down to the top.
At midnight.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, yeah. So it seems like we just want it finished, though. But all these things we want finished,
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
It's not as big an issue for me because I think that ultimately the problem will get solved and they'll plaster it, or there'll be another building there and you won't see it. And so I'd hate to see it get painted and then it makes it more difficult to plaster it. So that's my feeling.
Or do we want to let a gray wall sit there for 10 years?
Well, hopefully it's not going to be that. Hopefully the sale goes through and then they get permission to go on the site. But, I mean, do you have high confidence that once escrow closes?
Yes, I spoke with that pending owner, and it seemed very positive, yeah.
Okay. I think at least our general thing is we're going to want it finished. I mean, it should have been finished from the beginning, right? So.
Yeah. Yeah, our comments could reflect that it needs to get plastered.
Mm-hmm. Either that or,
we do.
or the city just does eminent domain and
Double
turns it into
entendre.
and turns it into a paseo. Okay.
You don't know that.
Okay. Now on to southern wall, on to backflow preventer. So I think the comment was to paint it, if possible, paint it black or whatever appropriate color. But I mean, it obviously doesn't have to be 3 colors, right? So,
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
This was an issue recently with the El Prado Motel. Came back for some details, and they had to do some screening around it. But I was on the site, and I saw somebody painting something. I don't remember if it was backflow preventers, but I have a feeling it could be painted.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So now it sounds like we're going to need to at least see a little bit more before we can. My guess is before someone's going to make a motion for approval. So I think we're going to need to see the detail. Sure.
For the backflow preventers, if they were painted, would you require, is that sufficient, or are the planters still a suggestion that everyone's positive towards?
What was proposed on the plans for?
So if
For that.
we're using steel
I see.
planters to match the accents on the structure with the Dianella Casa Blue, which will get to about 24 inches tall. So between the 24-inch tall planter and the 24-inch tall plant, we'd end up with approximately 4 foot of screening.
And what's the landscape material that's there now?
So, they just put agapanthus in,
Oh, okay,
so nothing per plan.
okay.
Chair Grumbine. So can we go back to the plan again? Or the rendering, or the photograph, sorry. So right now, there it is. We could zoom in. So if I'm understanding you correctly, you have these movable planters that would go in front of there, and then they would have plants in them, and it would screen this. But right now, you have some plants that are planted there that will continue to grow, hopefully. My feeling is that I think it's enough to just paint them out, to paint these out and just let them disappear. And I wouldn't futz around with these additional elements. I feel like the additional elements almost adds clutter, and it's just another thing to have to deal with and move around if you have to access. I don't think it's needed. I would just paint it out and let the plants be there. What is that? Is there a little wall, a stucco wall there?
Yes. That's on the neighboring property, I believe.
Oh, that belongs to the neighbor?
Yeah.
That, what I'm seeing is sort of gray. Can we
Yes.
zoom in a little bit closer to that?
Yeah, I'm
Oh, I
not sure
see.
whose
I see.
property
It's
it
on
is
the
on
other
this
side.
point, but there is a little bit of a grade change, and I think it's on the neighbor's property. I'd have to confirm.
Okay. Well, that's my feeling. I would just paint them out, make them just disappear and let the other plants grow in. Maybe you could put in some other types of plants that might grow up, but I don't think these planters are necessary.
All right, is everyone?
That's
I
just
agree.
my opinion.
Yeah, okay.
I would agree.
I would agree with that, with the addition of some additional planting, it could be behind those things, but just something that, yeah.
The big ugly transformer is going to draw your eye away from these backflow devices.
Maybe they paint the transformer like a plant.
And Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
what does Commissioner Ensberg mean by paint them out?
Well, what did Commissioner McClure?
A dark green.
Dark
black.
green or
dark green or black, whatever he said. I think that's great.
Yeah.
And then they just
okay. All right, so it seems like we've got at least direction on everything here, so let me try to summarize it. Okay, so to paint the garage, so for the, let's see, garage entry, to paint the beam and brackets a darker wood color, brown wood color. So that's one. And actually, as a note on the garage entry, to recommend that shrouds for the light fixtures be considered.
And
then that would be appreciated, but understanding that it was built per plan.
Yes, and I think what we were saying is maybe not for all of them, but maybe for the first three or so that you would, just to kind of.
Light fixtures, for
yeah.
several light fixtures.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, the window and door details are approved as retrofitted, or approvable, I should say, because it's not a motion to approve it. Approvable as retrofitted. The window colors are disappointing that the variation of color was not followed. But we're not going to be requiring changing them. The tile wall scuppers, to look at a design of clay tile that sleeves over the scuppers in some way, and creates some color and visual interest. For the southern wall property, at the property line, to have it finished to be finished off per the original plan. And for the backflow preventer, to be painted a dark green or black. And let's see, I think that's it. Anything else to? Oh, yeah.
Not to be picky, but I guess that's what we're here for, I think a dark green would be better than black.
Okay, is everyone feeling that?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say a dark green, to be painted dark green.
Like the color of the transformer.
Yeah.
All right, Commissioner?
Transformer green.
Yeah.
Well, I think, should we include that we can eliminate the proposed planter box?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and the proposed planter
So
boxes
that
are
goes
not
on record.
necessary, are not necessary with the,
No, that's a great solution, and because we were looking at screening, not
Yeah,
painting.
just
Yeah.
so that's included.
yeah.
And perhaps add, change out those.
Add some, add the
Something a little-
Yeah, remove the agapanthus and go back to their approved plant selections palette. All right. Any other adjustments, tweaks? All right. Who wants to make a motion with those comments?
So moved
All
for
right.
indefinite continuance of those comments.
Second.
All right, Vice Chair House, second by Commissioner Butler. All right, thank you. All right, under discussion, any discussion? Okay, all good. Let's have a roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Chair Grumbine. I'll take the roll call vote. Commissioner Uli,
Yes.
Vice Chair House,
Yes.
Commissioner Drury,
Abstain?
Commissioner Ensberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Lundvik,
Yes.
and Chair Grumbine.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Great.
Yeah, for your first.
You weren't too bad.
Yeah, tell your friends. All right. Okay, so we are on now to, let's see. We're at, okay, we are at 3 o'clock. Okay, we're only 5 minutes late. All right. We are on to new item for concept review. This is 301 East Yananali Street. This is located, yeah. All right. Order. All right. Located in EPV, this is a proposal to construct approximately 45,000 square feet of 1- and 2-story non-residential buildings, outdoor decks, dining patios, and 190 parking spaces, 161 below-grade spaces and 29 surface, including 11 accessible spaces and 27 bicycle parking spaces. The development would be a mix of 1- and 2-story buildings with a below-grade parking structure. The 3-acre property is located within the appealable jurisdiction of the coastal zone, and in M1 SP2 Light Manufacturing Cabrillo Plaza specific plan. Zones with coastal land use designation industrial. The property is currently being operated as an open yard and contractor supply and storage company. Grading will comprise approximately 16,000 cubic yards of cut, 2,500 cubic yards of fill, with 13,500 cubic yards to be exported off the site. No final appealable action will take place at this meeting. Project compatibility findings will be required for project design approval. So, welcome. So with all that, if you would introduce yourselves for the record, and if we have some staff comments, and then you'll have 15 minutes to present. Okay?
Good afternoon, Chair Grunby.
Yeah, well, let's hold on.
Just real quick, Kelly Broderson, I'm the case planner assigned to this project, and just want to let you know that as you can see, the applicant is here for comments. They will be proceeding to Planning Commission subsequently for a coastal development permit, a development plan, and setback modifications for some minor improvements in the setbacks along Yanonali and I think the freeway. And also, there was a project previously approved, a large commercial building that was previously approved, and there's now new owners that have revised the project, and that's why it's here again today. So I'll let the applicants go forward.
Okay.
So we'll go through the names. Maybe I should just introduce everyone. So Brian Cornell, Matthew Chow is from my office, Dana Bauer, Judy Camion, and Joseph Miller, who is the owner, and in fact, you all met him 3 weeks ago, I think, talking about the project of the bird sanctuary. Please. So Joseph, I don't know if you wanted to say anything at all before we start out.
Is this thing on?
No,
Nope.
push it.
I'm not going to start with an apology this time. And I'm also not going to take too much time since we just got to spend some time together. I appreciate the opportunity to come again and want to acknowledge my partner, David, back there. He can raise his hand. He says hello also, but we didn't want to talk too much. So I think you all got a chance to hear about who we are and what we do. And the last time we were together, we saw a project that was built and that I hope we were able to express our commitment to the architecture in the community, especially things like the fountain that hold a special place in the culture. This project is very interesting and very different in that have the opportunity to think through a space that has no buildings on it, and a space that holds a very interesting place in the city in that it's at the edge of the historic zone and where it meets with the funk zone, which is not an official term, but I think everyone knows what we're talking about. So we have a really, really high-level team here, but both teams are lovely. But I know that we needed to really think through who are the best people that'll give the most respect and thought to this site, and how can we make an idea that unites a sort of historical language and architecture of the city with all the really exciting things that have been happening in the funk zone now and have historically been happening here. So we think a lot about industrial and working real estate, which is what the funk zone was in terms of maritime activity. And then we sort of think back into the 20s when a lot of the architecture that we reference was being used. And my mind immediately went to an architect that I have long admired called Irving Gill, who did a lot of work without a lot of superfluous details. And when you look at industrial buildings from that period, you start to get some ideas. And I took that to my colleagues here, and we worked for almost a year on ideas around that and pushing and pulling and how can you get something that's simple and elegant but that's not boring? How can you use, as you'll see here, landscape in a way that really can do something special, I think. And anyway, two very different projects, and we're really excited to be here. And we're all very much looking forward to getting all of your feedback on this.
So this is part, Matthew, let's go to the next page, the site plan. This is part of the Cabrillo specific plan, and this was designated as 45,000 square feet of commercial market. As many of you know who were in the previous meetings, we had basically a big box, which was the desire of the Wright family, and a parking lot in front. This is a very different project, as Joey has said. So it is this intersection. Bill Wright wanted this property to be in the HLC. He saw this as a gateway to the city. And so it's a little bit odd in that way because the Funk Zone is not. And the Irving Gill reference, I think, is something that I got really excited about because I kind of thought about, this area was the industrial part of Santa Barbara, and it could have been this very simple industrial. Gill conceived a lot of these buildings in Torrance that were these industrial, very simple buildings. And so that's kind of the look. But the really important thing is the landscape plan. Let's go to the next slide. And I'd actually like to turn it over to Dana and Judy to talk about basically the landscape concept. Just real quick, all the parking is underground, so I'll show you that plan, which is great. So there's 161 spaces. This really will become the anchor to the Funk Zone. And I've joked with Joey that likely people will park here and then go to the Funk Zone, which maybe is a good thing, when it's all said and done. So with that, let's talk about the landscape.
Hi. I think for us, we've been so excited working on this project, especially in the way that the architecture and the landscape has been created in partnership. And so, with the architecture as this very simple, elegant backdrop and the rhythm of the columns, we were able to come in with very sculptural planting and the architecture being a backdrop. So the planting really reinforces that rhythm. I think our main concept is that at the kind of heart of the project, we're looking at a Mediterranean plant culture, which is cultivated and in some ways more formal and more related to the architectural style. As the landscape emanates outward toward the edges of the property, we are transitioning the plant culture to the local habitat. So we have sort of on the northeast, we have the Laguna Creek or channel, and that's our freshwater marsh. We have along Yananali and turning the corner on Garden, we have coastal meadow is the habitat. And then along the property line, sort of at the west, we have the oak woodland. So you can see a transition as we'll move through. You can see the local habitats there, but you'll see as we, in a minute, move through the renderings, how that plays out. Also, while we're on the plan, I just want to talk a little bit about the hardscape materials. So at the ground level, we're looking at the Santa Barbara flagstone as the expanse of hardscape that's really throughout the heart of the project. And then we're using mission tile to create smaller scale articulation and almost to create these outdoor rooms, which you'll see at the entry just beyond that archway. Also in the courtyard at that angled piece at the north. And then the palm grove or a tree grove with a fountain right at the top of the valet entrance. And I think that this gets at a larger goal of ours, which is to really create a neighborhood feel, an intimate scale for this property with lots of opportunities for small gathering. And I think our material articulation, as well as the detailed, plant selection, really helps us with that.
Let's go to the renderings so that we don't run out of time.
Totally.
I'm watching that timer.
Oh, yeah, let's do it.
It's like the pitch clock.
Is that the?
I went to my first game, I went to an Angels game last night, and it's fast.
Start using up your time.
I know, it's terrible. This is the view, is this the? I don't think
Yananali, yeah.
this is it.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
You want to start here?
I would. So this is the corner of Yananali and Garden, and this is this is the pedestrian entry that we spent a lot of time choreographing, and you can see what I was talking about where we have coordinated really a lot with the architecture in terms of having the rhythm of the trees and the windows very choreographed. One of the things that's so fun about that is that we're also thinking about the interiors of the spaces and looking out through the landscape so that everything is kind of filtered and layered, and there's a lot of interest. And for us, it was important that that interest is year-round. So a lot, so what we're seeing in the back, we're seeing an arbutus that's kind of inside of that archway at the entrance. It's our idea too that, together with the whole team, that we're creating a kind of gathering space at the entry here, and that there's a lot of plant buffer here at the entry as well because of how because of the busyness of the intersection.
and right there where that lovely woman is sitting is then there's a gracious open stair that goes
Yeah.
down into the parking structure.
Yeah.
Let's keep going. Yep.
Sure, this is along Yananali, so you can kind of see it's an oblique angle sort of round the corner to that same pedestrian entrance. But this is our coastal meadow at the edge. We have the umbularia, which are the street trees along, which coordinate really beautifully. Their canopy coordinates really beautifully with the arches. And we have several opportunities to ascend to the project along Yananali. Here we're now up those stairs and we're kind of closer to the arch, and you can see how that pad of the mission tile, the red tile, and then there's a little bit of a raised planter in there. And so that's kind of creating that entry almost like a tunnel. We also are using potted plants to keep that human scale small and intimate, and so that it feels very much like more of a domestic or residential scale. This is the top of the valet entrance. So this is the fountain, which has a tiled channel, which was actually inspired by one of the water features at Lotus Land, which reflects color so beautifully into the water. And we're creating, the trees are also, of course, creating shade so that we're creating comfort here for hanging out and gathering.
I should mention, by the way, that we are planning on going down into the parking structure for these planting areas. So where we have cars parked, we're going to drop the parking structure so that we can have 3.5 feet of planting.
Here's this is probably the major entrance off of Yananali, and we created this kind of cove to minimize the length of the kind of corridor entryway. So we have a seating area gathering right at the street, right up the stairs there, with a tree at the center. This view is, you've come down the driveway, and this is the valet entrance, the circle. So this is where the plant culture behind us in this view is the oak woodland, and that's to do with the amazing existing trees there along the freeway. So here we're ascending in very different kind of entrance. Here is a little bit more of a procession, which the palms help to create with the rhythm of the trunks and the tall canopy. And that sort of plays with the arch in the background, which is the actual entry point up to the level of the of the platform.
So you can see, we only have 4 minutes left, so you can see that we've been completely hiding the building with the landscaping. So now, in the interest of full disclosure, I'm going to show you the naked building without any landscaping. First, the photo sims that the city wants as far as mountain views. Most of this building is 1 story and about 21 feet. The highest is 31 feet. Those second floor elements are at about 31 feet. So I think you can see there's still a lot of the mountains that show up. Next, Matthew. This is from the freeway side, a little hard to see, but, I think it's gonna be better than a pile of rocks, certainly. And now going through those same views that you were looking at before, here is sort of that naked building with the archways and the sensibility of it. We really want it to just be very simple, elegant plaster, steel windows. We obviously see the color as coming through the landscape. The windows, we're open to what those are, but I see them as being some kind of a dark color. Then here you can see we're kind of showing a green. Keep going, Matthew. That's that courtyard space. That little tower is sort of is definitely an homage to Gill. This is that other Paseo, and then that's that entrance, which I actually love, this arch going into that courtyard space. So the parking area below, 161 parking spaces, accessed by that drive that goes along the habitat area. We have a 50-foot setback that I didn't mention off of Laguna Creek, which is obviously necessary. Next slide. So the predominant square footage is all on the ground floor, and the idea of Joseph and David is really that this will all be curated into very, independent little businesses and shops and eateries and whatever that'll evolve over time. You can see very little second floor. We're anticipating a restaurant in the corner there at the 45 degree, which is going to have incredible mountain views. And we can go to the sections, all flat roof. These are a little bit hard to see, but those sections on the lower portion, they show one of the modifications that Kelly mentioned. We're getting a modification to have the parking within the front yard 20-foot setback, even though it's all underground. So staff is supportive of that modification. And then the other section there shows that concept for, if you'll blow that up, Matthew, shows basically how we're going to drop down over the parking spaces to be able to get planting area within the courtyard space. We can go through quickly the elevations. They're very tiny, but that is the Yananali Street side, so you can see the simple rhythm of these buildings. And that is the freeway side along there. You can just see that archway. Well, I guess you can't really see the archway. There's a lot of different angles here, so it's sort of hard to create the elevation views precisely. So I think I'm going to leave it at that unless anybody has anything to add.
I'll just add one thing I think that went slightly unmentioned is that landscape's beautiful. I personally think the architecture is spectacular and love it. But we spent a lot of time thinking about the experience of folks, right? Like for us as retailers, as retail building owners, as people that try and make places that people want to spend time, I think the architecture and landscape are two lovely things, but this sort of piece that it was mentioned but not emphasized was the entire experience of the floors. I think that the things that we walk on are this dimension that I think a lot of people just, we'll do concrete or something. Well, there was an enormous amount of discussion of the type of stone, the local type of stone that we're using, and then the tiling where, you'd see that in other places oftentimes, but we're trying to bring it to the pedestrian experience. And I think the richness of the overall experience, that's why I always kind of give Brian a hard time about architecture, is like, well, that's a view from across the street through a building that you could never actually get because there's a building there, whatever, how perspectives are made. But I think that really the thing that's beautiful about this plan is the actual experience of coming into this space and how you're going to be enveloped in both texture, color, and feel of all of it in 3 dimensions is something I'm excited about. And everyone mentioned, but I wanted to emphasize to end this. So we're at 0. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So if that concludes your presentation, and it does because your time's out.
He went I was
It was
gonna
the
save a
baseball
little time, but-
when you start talking
Yeah.
baseball. We will now go to public comment. So anyone in the room wishing to comment on this, please get a speaker slip and hand it in. Or if you already have, is there any speaker slips?
Thank you, Chair Grumbine. Currently, I do not have any speaker slips. We also do not have any virtual participants today, and no written correspondence was submitted. So back to the commission.
All right, back to the commission for questions. Let's start with that. Commissioner Butler?
Thank you for bringing this project. I actually drive right by this stone yard at least 3 times a week. A couple of things that just came up is, given that this is a commercial application here, I mean, for use for commercial businesses, a couple of things sort of stood out at me is, have you thought about lighting, particularly how you would light both the exteriors of the buildings and also the landscaping? And then signage, obviously, is a commercial business. You're going to have a lot of people coming, oh, where's the office of blah, 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 et cetera. So maybe that's a little bit down. I just wanted to elevate these, certainly 2 considerations that came to me. And then thirdly, how are you going to keep the water out of the parking garage?
Well, the simple answer there is if the entrance to the garage is at the base flood elevation, the buildings are above base flood, so that podium level is above the base flood. Essentially, if the floods go over the base flood elevation, it will go into the garage and it will have to be pumped out. But nothing will be down there that will be a problem. All the electrical, everything is above there, so the only thing that is going down there is the elevator, and that will have to be flood-proofed, but the water will go down there in the event of a major flood. That being said, I think the likelihood is the floodwaters are going to probably make their way to the Garden Street underpass before they go into this building, but that's the plan.
Great.
And then the answer the first 2 questions, signage and lighting are something that we think of all the time, a lot. I saw Judy nodding her head. But in the same way that we kind of look at the architecture and landscape and how they can marry together, we take lighting to do the same thing. So to highlight, first of all, to make a path for folks to be able to walk around, but also to highlight certain visual elements that we think are interesting. We have lighting designers that we use all the time. We haven't engaged them at this point in the process, but that'll be an important partner for us. And the same goes for signage designers. To me, signage is something very interesting that can either make or break a pedestrian experience, and the unification of that signage. It's something that David and I spend an enormous amount of time on. And the folks that come into our buildings know that there's a very specific signage criteria that they have to ascribe to, because those pristine buildings with a bunch of ugly neon signs could really ruin them. So the short answer is those are things that are high on our lists, and we think about a lot. And we don't have yet, but we'll be developing over time and submitting.
All right. Okay, other questions?
Mr. Chair, maybe just to reiterate or re-ask the question. So you're really depending on the landscape palette to and live in the color, because it's rather severe, the architecture. So you're expecting the landscape to take the place of color splashes on the building itself, buildings itself. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, easy then. It's just,
All right.
Yes.
I'll ask a question that's not a one-word answer.
Mr. Chair, sorry, one more
yes,
question.
Commissioner
So I'm sure you're aware there's a proposal that a hotel go diagonally to this location. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to bring that up.
Painfully.
Okay, yeah. Can you go to your precedent images, your inspiration images? Okay. What the bottom left image? Where is that? Or what is that? Who is that?
David, where is that? David, it's in Coolio.
Okay. Okay, and that. So I'm assuming that's fairly recent architecture. Is that okay?
Yes.
And then the second to the right. How about that one? Pinterestulia. Okay. And then the Irving Gill at the top middle. So, what building is that?
That's what is it?
Torrance.
That's right.
Okay. And is that also the?
Restaurant, I think.
It's currently a restaurant. It was designed as a train depot.
Okay, and then the center drawing,
So this was the
that-
proposed development in Torrance, Irving Hill. So you can
Okay.
see train depot.
Yeah, some of the,
And I'm unsure if this was actually built, but.
I don't
this
think it
his
was.
proposal. Yeah, this was his proposal.
gotcha. Okay, so in looking at these, and actually that left center, where's?
This is also Irving Hill.
Uh-huh.
I don't know exactly what project it was.
I think it's a house in La Jolla.
It's an interior courtyard.
Okay, so in looking at a lot of the examples, you seem to, what is this building, or is this series of collections of buildings, do you have a concept of what it was supposed to be or is, or like if you repurpose that Irving Gill, factory or whatever, it looks like in some ways what the Funk Zone is, rehabbing industrial buildings as a rehab. And so what is the story or thought that the concepts that you're trying to have for because what right now looks like a collection of buildings that you have. So what is there? Have you thought of their story?
Yeah, for me, it's so funny you asked that question because David and I spend a lot of time, and I didn't think anyone else really did it, and no one really notices ever. But any building that we've ever done, we actually start with the story. It's literally a one-page story. And the story here is actually around that same idea, that earthquake comes, mid-20s, and the person that owns the site is dealing with this sort of like rubble and fill and says, okay, we want to hire the sort of finest architect in Southern California to build us the new building because we have some insurance money for our, fishing net business. It was either fish or fishing nets. But they were like sort of prominent business people, and they'd come from Southern Italy, which a lot of the folks in town, they can trace their ancestry back there. And they were very proud, so they didn't want to build this like sort of a plain building that no one liked, and so they hired like a Gill character or not a Meisner character, a Bertram Goodhue character, one of these great architects that was doing the San Diego Balboa Park or sort of the Chicago World's Fair at the time, and brought them in as the sort of pride of the community to build the headquarters for their industrial use. And as you saw in the drawings, what sort of happens over time is like, we're going to, have to find all these beautiful plants, but that it had been sort of overtaken in time with this Mediterranean climate with plants sort of growing over it. So the idea was like this sort of very humble, simple, but proud building that's been there for 60 or 70 years. I just always loved that idea of instead of just we throw up these tilt-up buildings now for Skechers if you drive to Palm Springs or something on the 60. But back in the 20s or 30s, they used to build, if you look at the Gill piece in Torrance, they built it like with pride and with architecture. But it was still simple and unornamented.
But I also think that it also, at least the inspirations we've talked about, is that this didn't all happen at one time.
Right.
That it
Exactly.
was, maybe those arches were the first thing that were built, kind of like this image, and then the little admin building got built, and
Yeah.
then,
Like a campus.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, that sorry to be so. I never usually tell people about that, but I like it, and I think it's a good question, so I wanted to give a good answer. But yeah, that's the idea, and I think that the easy thing would be to come and like, here's another, Mission Revival, right, but that wouldn't be suited for the site, I don't think. So that was the idea that I had.
Okay.
Pride
I have
of
a
building
question.
again.
Who are your tenants?
Tenants. So we specialize, David and I, around the country, in fact, in working with independent retail and restaurant businesses. So we have a lot of folks from, up and down the coast in California that have, clothing stores, restaurants, soft goods stores, furniture stores, art galleries, things like that would love to open. and are looking for a space that speaks to them. We talk to people all the time that want to come here and don't have the right spaces to go to. And those are the kinds of folks that we
A lot of
work with.
times, small businesses, however, rely on that delivery and the parking in front. You don't have delivery or parking in front.
Yeah, I mean, look, in our just personal experience over the last decade and a half, we've worked on projects like Rockefeller Center in New York, Midtown Manhattan. We have projects in California. We have no parking in the front. And I don't disagree at all with that concept. And I think there are a lot of really successful places like that. But we think that if you create an experience like we're proposing here that people want to be a part of, they're more than happy to park their car and happily spend time walking around and we hope visiting the other businesses in the fun zone.
Specifically to loading, though, I think the reality is that it's going to be smaller trucks
No,
off.
I think it's a great
hours,
idea,
right?
as long as it's successful, yeah. I think it's a great idea. Get rid of the car, yeah.
Well, we have had a lot of success with it over time, and we're hoping that this will be too, hopefully.
Okay. Okay, and then the follow-up question is, so seeing as how this is an EPV, the question you know is coming. So, so how is this one of the, Spanish colonial revival or Mediterranean siblings that are, that Irving Gill obviously, and some of your pictures are obviously like the one in the middle left, is obviously a lot more ornamented and a lot higher style and a lot more can be argued for it being part of the within a Spanish colonial revival or Mediterranean revival language, at least fairly strongly because of some of the ornamentation. On some of the other examples, I mean, Irving Gill spans that, right? So he spans from much more ornamented, detailed Mediterranean revival to very much early modernism. So so how do you?
Well, I think the first thing is that we decided that we didn't want to have tile roofs, that we wanted it to be a flat roof building with different variations. And part of that, too, was just keeping it low in scale because the mountain view from this, or the view from Cabrillo and on up Garden to the mountains is extraordinary. And that also facilitates, a lot of solar panels and being able to do that. So I think the flat roofs are the strongest piece of this that maybe is not obviously in our tradition. I don't think we have all the detail yet that is going to be important to pull this off, like that doorway or whatever, where the balconies are and special little, the way I see it is the doorway into that restaurant on the second floor is some really extraordinary, maybe a little bit more ornamental opening to it within this very simple, framework. But to me, it's sandstone, it's flagstone, it's plaster, it's steel, glass. That is what these buildings are.
Okay.
Hi, may I add something to that, which is, I think what's interesting about with the Gill is how clean it is, and we see it as it's realized that there's no vegetation really affiliated with a lot of his buildings. And I think in some ways, the ornamentation will come from the landscape. So we'll be, the plant culture has been very carefully selective to include an abundance of Santa Barbara natives in concert with Mediterranean plants. We only had to look not so far, so close at Lotus Land, which is one of our absolute touchstones in our practice. Such an amazing garden that really celebrates plant culture. And so we're looking at how the forms and silhouettes, the textures, the coloration, the seasonality, the fragrance will contribute to this experience, as Joseph mentioned. And so in a way, that is very much an ornamental layer that we see with partnering with the architecture.
Well, Mr. Chair, if I may ask a question. So I'm assuming, back to the plants, that this is going to be basically drought-resistant or drought-tolerant, because we're going to be in a drought again, and we're going to be in floods again, but I don't think you guys are in trouble with that. But, all right, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All of the plant material meets the WUCOL criteria for low water or very low water need, without exception.
Thank you. Okay. All right, other questions?
I don't have any questions. I have comments.
All right, roll into comments. All right, Commissioner Uli, go for it.
Thank you. First of all, an extraordinary first pitch of the ball, to use a baseball metaphor. Not that I'm a baseball fan at all, but nonetheless, I think this is a first good pitch out of the game. I'm mildly concerned, and I got the Irving Gill reference immediately. I'm mildly concerned that Gill's work tends to be more contemporary than it is Spanish colonial arrival or any other of the family members of what our guidelines require us to do. However, it seems to me if you took a Meridian Studios kind of approach to it, then because George Washington Smith, is, a revered god around here. If you strip the color off of Meridian Studios, you've got an Irving Gill complex, basically. So I would encourage you to somehow find a mix there so that we don't have a difficult time approving a project that doesn't fit within our guidelines clearly. Secondly, I love the narrative. I think the storytelling helps people to understand the culture you're trying to create in this development. And if that narrative is such that this used to be a big place or it was built over time, then the buildings should represent that they look like they were built over time. They should be cohesive enough but independent enough that it supports your narrative. I think it's a good first step. I think you're right. This is a gateway. A lot of people will see this building and then judge the rest of the city because of it. And so you've got to hit a home run. Another baseball reference. You got to hit a home run if you're going to make it successful.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Dre.
Yes, I agree with those comments by Commissioner Uli. I'd also say that Mr. Cornell brought up it's about detail. It's about the telling detail. What separates these buildings from just sort of candy cutouts. And I think that I'm familiar enough with Mr. Cornell's work that those telling details will be forthcoming next time we see this project. Thank you.
Mr. Chair. I, too, am a big fan of Irving Gill. So I did my due diligence and studied this book very carefully. And a simple building with a bunch of arches alone does not an Irving Gill make. And a couple things began to become evident to me. And one is that what he did with the windows became the ornamentation. And that was, as the more I studied your plans, the more I saw, okay, you get that too, and you're going in this direction. But a lot of the windows look like commercial storefront, and that's not good enough. He would play with the cut-ups, and it would vary from one window to another, and it really made it very interesting. Hey, look at that, that's different than that. And then also, often there's a strong rhythm of windows, but sometimes he'd play with these over here are spaced differently than these over here. Another thing I noticed is that rarely was a two-story mass buried in the middle of one-story mass. It would often be a two-story mass, and then there'd be a little pop-out. Would just kind of make an interesting composition. So that's one area that really struck me is the Garden Street elevation. There is a two-story elevation there, but it's not really relieved.
Actually, can we go to that real
by
fast?
anything.
I think when we just go to the naked rendering, that would maybe be the best, yeah. That one. Is that what you're thinking?
Where are you?
Yeah. And there is a little bit of relief, but, it's an area that needs some more study. So, I think just generally get a little looser with the elements and how you play around with them. And as you're saying, there'll be focal points of detail, because he didn't always just eschew detailing. Sometimes you'd see a pretty elaborate door surround. So I think it's off to a great start, and I think it's going to be a great project. So I think that's the extent of my comments.
Sure, I'll comment. I think it's a beautiful project, and I think Irving Gill is a real appropriate style to choose here, as opposed to that same building with a tile eyebrow on it. I think that what we do is we refer to the requirements of the EPV district, Monterey, whatever other approved styles. And the reality is that this area, and this site in particular, this was not the EPV district. This is not the natural child of EPV. This is an adopted. This is an adopted district, and I think if you're downtown in the core, the natural child is EPV. Out here, the natural child is not. It's going to be the adopted child, and we're still going to put him in pants and shirt that kind of reflects the rest of the family. But I don't think we have to lean on it as a reason to not accept Irving Gill. Irving Gill, we've seen Irving Gill projects brought to us before, and they have failed. Number one, because they were in the EPV district, and we couldn't bend that far. But also, they were not really respecting what Irving Gill's more known projects were, and his more known projects, if as Brian has called them, the naked building, if that's what we see as Irving Gill in the book, we're going to be sorely disappointed. What we see as Irving Gill in the book is buildings that are in landscaping. It may be a large lawn, it may be, a lot of landscaping and trees around it, but the ones that we are familiar with that we appreciate are buildings that are in a landscaped area. And I think the landscaping that we have seen presented to us today as a concept is going to really make these buildings work well. So those are my comments.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, yes, Commissioner Butler.
So again, thanks for the project. One thought is really appreciate the flat roof line, the low sort of horizon or size of the building, et cetera. But using landscaping is going to be critical. I think that's a wonderful approach. You really have expended a lot of energy there to make that work. That's excellent. I'm kind of pleased with the overall layout, kind of the architectural approach. It is a little severe. I think I heard the word severe earlier, and I think you need make some adjustments for that. I mean, I worked in the Silicon Valley for years. That could be San Jose. If you look at that, that looks a lot like, and I know that's no landscaping on it, but just being literal about that doesn't say Santa Barbara to me. So, there you go. I recognize that. So, but what I am suggesting is overall, I think it's a good start, and it's going to have to compete. As you mentioned, there's a hotel proposed on one corner. Across the street is a commercial building that's just yellow, and I don't even know what it's made out of. It's just odd bits of metal and stuff. So you're going to be head and shoulders above that, and then you're going to have the whatever happens on the other corner. So I think trying to make it a little more integrated with the approaching architecture would be helpful. So a good start, I think. Some ways to go, and as it was mentioned already, the details are really going to make this work.
Mr. Chair, the only thing I'd add is that I think shadow play is going to be really essential. How these buildings interact with each other and with sunlight. The winter sun, the summer sun, and live in the buildings themselves and the landscape will follow suit. Shadow play.
All right.
Okay.
Poetry.
Thank you. Thank you for this presentation. Appreciate it very much. Could we go to the inspiration photos? I have a number of comments. So First of all, on the site, I want to say that I really understand and appreciate the arrangement of the structures, given the constraints of the site and the busy intersection. I get why you put what you put where you put it. So I wanted to make that point. I think that the size, bulk, and scale is appropriate. I do, in fact, think that more height could be positive in a couple of select spots. I feel like I don't want the building to necessarily be hidden. I think it needs to have some kind of, it needs more of a, something, well, in fact, the picture here on the inspiration in this middle one, where there's that little tower element, some taller pieces, not that one, the upper middle.
The train station.
Yeah. You know, something, a terminus, when you're entering from Yananali, something that is terminating at the end there that pulls you in and that adds some drama. I think something like that could be added to the architecture. I think overall you have good bones, potentially good bones to what is being presented. But I think it should be more prominent and recognizable from the freeway and from other parts of Santa Barbara. And that it would be identifiable in terms of a place that you really would want to go, that you would recognize it, you would see it, and you would want to go there. On the design, I feel like it needs to way more drama. It just feels, when I look at well, even in these pictures here, you look at the picture on the upper right with the big cactuses, the contrast between the white wall and the cactus. You mentioned Lotus Land, and you think about the Madame's house with that gigantic cactus in front. I think that to me, the landscape should be much more uniquely artistic and unusual. It feels a little bit like kind of just an overlay right now. It doesn't feel specific and dramatic as an art piece of itself. And I think that it should be more, greater contrast, more artistic detail, more bold and more attitude, more of a personality, a unique personality and an attitude, and more quirkiness. This is, as we say, it's between the funk zone and downtown. So how are we making this be both funky and traditional at the same time? How are you really creatively bringing those two elements together? Meridian Studios was mentioned, and I had that as well. I think that that's a really good example. More color. I would certainly, myself, support more bold colors. I think of somebody like Luis Barragan, if you were, some of these, the picture you have here on the lower left sort of reminds me of
I think I hear
work.
striped awnings coming really soon.
Well, I don't know if that's the place for necessarily here, but you've got, you have, and I do appreciate the paving. And I would suggest that just one paving. I don't think you need to change it and have like the brick, and then just one really powerful paving throughout, I think, is the strongest thing. So yeah, and it was also interesting to me, the project that you have over by the Berg Sanctuary. I think that's a really interesting example. If you drive by there today, it's just this wonderful little place that just pulls you in. And it's got right now, all of the echiums are blooming right now, the purple, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. The landscaping is very minimal. It doesn't have every single plant in the world. It has this very dramatic landscape. So that's, I think, a really good example. But right now, how do you, how does this building say that it's Santa Barbara, and it builds upon the past, but it's also funky? It's also the funk zone. So I think you are, going in the right direction, and I like a lot of these examples that you're showing. Others have mentioned, the drama, the shadows, the light, the dark. So, yeah, I don't think the building should be hidden. I think it should be very much its own self, and that the landscape should be its own self, and the two of them are very much an artistic expression. So, and right now, like if we go to the picture from Yananali, let's go to that picture. Not that one. See, right now, this feels very bland to me. This doesn't make me want to go in there. I don't feel pulled in. So I think, like I was saying before, maybe you could have a couple taller elements in some places, like at that end there, that would really draw you. And it also would be strong from other places, you know, in the city. And then, of course, I always am such a fan of bright white, but also I think, because it gives such a beautiful contrast.
I got to say, these renderings, if I may, this ended up a little bit pinkish, and it
Yeah.
really, the intent is for it to be white.
Okay. And it's okay to have, like I was saying, I think it could be really cool to have some really bold colors in some places because it is the funk zone. And so maybe you have an opportunity to do something really bold like that. So anyway, I guess I've gone on enough, but I hope that that's helpful. That's the intent. And
Up a full page.
I did. But
As opposed to Michael.
well, just to end, I do think it's moving in a positive direction. I just think you need to give it a little bit more, quirkiness and personality and attitude.
Yep.
And then I think it would really be,
But the right kind of attitude.
yeah. So thank you.
EPV added.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so then I think I'll wrap up with my comments.
Pardon my interruption, Mr. Chair. Could I go to the Commissioner McClure's comments that he sent
Oh,
in?
yes, please.
And Kira, if you want to put these on the screen, because I'm going to butcher all these plant names. Phoenix dactylifera may not work this close to the ocean. 2, there are too many species of plant that are not durable enough for commercial use. Things like Salvia, Cistus, Chera, Cenothus, Baccharis, these are all subject to careful irrigation control, timely pruning, and are not particularly long-lived species. 3, I like the tree palette. I know you are not proposing all, but in general, nice trees. If you used them all, it would be too busy. 4, the landscape is nice, but I question its durability. I question if a commercial landscape maintenance company can manage such a landscape. I think a tougher palette is necessary. And finally, 5, regarding the plantings on the roof, I would encourage you to really put effort into these planters and irrigation techniques. I can see this fading out and not being a component if not done correctly. For example, galvanized planters, copper pipes, valves on the ground. Please show your plans and details for the roof garden equipment in the subsequent meetings.
All right.
Kelly, will you send those comments to us?
Okay. All right. So, in addition to those comments, so I guess I'll add my comments and then I'll try to summarize. So I think I agree with most everything that's been said so far. I think to me, it comes down to your inspiration. If we can go to your inspiration page, image page, and I really appreciate you having a story because I think that really helps both explain and also sort of summarize where you're going with it. So when I look at these inspiration images, I think the ones that, to be simple about it, the ones that need to be pulled are the bottom left, having planar walls. This is not part of any Spanish Mediterranean, close enough to EPV tradition to be able to justify it. I see how it ties to Irving Gill to some degree, but and then the second to the right, bottom right, similarly. It definitely looks like a sort of a combination of Le Corbusier and Irving Gill. So that I think that's straying towards him.
Corbusier.
Yeah, Corbugill. But I think that the ones that you want to lean into more is your middle left image, your top left image. Some of your middle can be that as your train station or those elements. But I think you really need to look at those, and you may already have been, but focus even more on the buildings, each having their story as well, but that story still needs to be at least close enough to Santa Barbara's story and EPV, and Gill is fine as an inspiration as long as you pull from his more Spanish and Mediterranean stuff and have some of that detail that doesn't. And yes, the top right, The flat roof thing actually doesn't bother me at all. I think Pueblo Revival has plenty of flat roof, plenty of Spanish Colonial Revival buildings have flat roofs, but it's just the way in which they're done and executed. And so, and that, we need to see that in, and even if it's in hand renderings, because it takes too long to render everything by the computer, and you can hint at things a lot easier. Whatever that is, that needs to be expressed as part of that, the subtlety of it, because otherwise you're just, left with, what could have been the story, which was this whole thing was one giant block and a train yard or whatever, and then it really is an industrial, and that's really is doing the funk zone story, but that's not EPV, so you got to kind of marry those two. So, yeah. So that would be the overall thing is, I would say lean into the middle left, top left, and then your bottom right and your, middle right as well. Those ones are in the right. And then actually the middle, second to left, those two Gill images. But he has those, he has capitals, he has a little, just enough detail in there to make it still be part of that tradition. So I think that would be my comments. Okay, so let me try summarizing. All right, so so all in all, this is, I think that in general, everyone's fairly, is at least supportive of the mass bulk scale of where you're going with the, and the project concept in general. Let's start with that. I think there's very, very favorable comments along those lines. And with the main things being development of detail, so that it stays more within a Spanish Colonial Revival palette. And then on the massing side of things, the only comment by Commissioner that was in terms of adjustment of massing, and I agree with Commissioner Ensberg on this, is look at perhaps a few taller elements or selectively designed taller massings in certain areas to either end views or and to break up the overall low character of the massing, and to give focal points. So the narrative was appreciated and very good, and is helpful in understanding the project. Regarding the planting in general, one of our kind of basic rules is that the building needs to look good without the plants too. So I think that is one of my, as an architect, that's one of my favorite tricks is like, oh gosh, I can't figure out this wall. Oh, bougainvillea.
Like Wright said. That's right.
Oh, yeah, do you?
Yeah. And Dr. Gambari is the same. An architect and advise the plant vines.
There we go. So the goal is to have it, the architecture speak for itself. Obviously, the planting is going to be a very important part of it, and so it needs to be very, very carefully considered with it. But also that it needs to stand on its own.
Chair Grumby, could we just sort of, to me, they're both artistic expressions.
Mm-hmm.
The landscape should be as powerful as the building, like when you go to Lotus Lane,
Mm-hmm.
for example. So I just want to make, it's not that we
Yeah.
have a building and we're
That's
just
a good
putting a
point.
few
Yeah.
little fluffies around, that it's really, and that's why I like that one picture on the upper right here, that it's a piece, it's dramatic, it's sculptural, so
Yeah.
can we just?
Yeah,
make that-
we'll add the comment on the landscape that it does need to be a dramatic statement, and we understand that and very much want
Or
that.
it could be very, it's an opportunity to really make this piece, this project be unique.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so landscape is especially for this project, is a unique opportunity, and we encourage being even more dramatic with your landscape design. And then we'll also add on to that to look at Commissioner McClure's comments regarding the longevity of the planting palette, and to take that into consideration the next time you come back as well. His comments on the landscape. Okay, so then, some other suggestions of things to, inspiration images. So, look at the Meridian Studio as an example. I think that was brought up, and I thought of a similar thing. Not only does Meridian Studio have the color, which makes it very dramatic on the walls, but it also has small elements within the wall, whether it's a grill or whether it's a window or offset and lighting, and so it has these small moments that also balance off the wall, the large flatness of the wall. So to look at Meridian Studio as a source of inspiration, and then as well as in particular the image on your images board that of the top left, middle left, and bottom right, middle right, and middle second to the left, the two black and white images. To look at those, and
We'll number them next time.
yeah, the left, right, and okay. So as mentioned, also the details are going to be extremely important, especially they're on the lesser side, and so we will want to see evidence and detail of that in elevations and in the future renderings, including window variations. That was also mentioned. And as a way of helping the severity of the current elevations, as design feels very severe on the architecture side. Another comment was to pay attention and maybe talk more about it on the next time about the shadow play within your within the site and the design. Another note was that the arrangement of the site was very much appreciated and well done. Another note was that there needs to be identifiable attitude and quirkiness to it. So and that this also relates to this being both a gateway, view and experience of Santa Barbara, and also being connected to the Funk Zone and wanting to tie those things together. And regarding the paving, we appreciate the material. At least one commissioner is suggesting simplification of it. And I would sort of add to that, perhaps there's maybe a way of ordering it differently without cross-skewing things as much. But I don't know. That's additional thing that you've obviously been studying a lot, and I think continue to look at and study. Any other comments to add? Everyone good with that?
Oh,
All right.
just the bridge aspect. That it's bridging.
Yes.
Bridging between the Funk Zone and, it is EPV, but it's also the Funk
Yeah.
Zone.
So actually,
So that there's opportunity for something, really unique.
Yeah, so along that lines, I think that's a good point. We recognize that this is unlike most properties within the EPV. We recognize that this is actually much stronger attached to the Funk Zone, and part of that, and it needs to, and so we're not setting a precedent so that everyone else can say, well, you let them do Irving Gill. Yeah, because you're exactly. But we're not putting that into the minutes.
No less loved.
That's right.
But we do recognize that this is, unlike most of the EPV, this piece needs to span both between the Spanish Mediterranean traditions and also the adjacent Funk Zone.
The funky tradition.
Yeah.
I even said that in the project description. The architecture is intended to bridge that gap.
Okay. All right, so now just do it. Yeah. Sorry.
Hand him the gavel.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so any other, let's see, any other comments that we want to add to this? I would say also that we appreciate the sensitivity to the mountain view, which the site has a very strong one, and in a public way, in a way that also is a little different than most of the EPV, where you get that on your grid cross streets, and you don't really get that when you're on most of State Street and downtown when you're in the face of a building. So this one actually has a really great view that you're helping to accentuate and use.
And that when we're suggesting adding more height, that we're, that is selective
Yeah.
for the purpose of, you know, making the building more powerful, but not to, you know, augment.
Yeah.
And make the,
Yep, to fit within the view and not, yeah.
so we're
just
not
overwhelm it.
suggesting to reduce the view, but to make both of them more exciting.
Okay, anything else? All right, I will look for someone to make the motion with those comments. Oh,
Well, I'll move for an indefinite continuance.
yeah.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Oh, with those comments?
With those comments.
Because I think this is no final appealable action, but this isn't just concept.
It
Well,
doesn't
it's
say
not,
it's a one-time
it's not the
pre-application.
one-time pre-app, so.
Right, so.
Of course, with those comments.
Chair Grumbine, so
Yeah.
indefinite continuance to Planning Commission or back to the HLC before it goes to Planning Commission?
I don't know, what is the next step? Planning Commission, right?
If you would like to see it again, you can continue it back to HLC, or if you feel that it's sufficient to go forward for its discretionary review, it just indefinitely continues to Planning Commission.
The Planning Commission.
What does Chair,
Well, and actually, I go to the applicant and see if they're, would this
Well, I'm
have a
not sure
preference?
when we think we'll be at the Planning Commission, so I think we could continue to refine it. Do they need to make findings?
do they need to make HLC compatibility findings prior to it goes?
No,
PDA.
at PDA. it will.
PDA, okay. Okay. So, yes.
So do you want
as,
to come back here, or you want to go to the
Well,
Planning
the
Commission?
project, if the project is, it is in the development review process.
Yeah, no, we'll get back on.
Don't oversell it.
Wait, you want to go back to, come back here before?
Well,
can-
Chair Grumbine, it is, and there is, I have 100% trust in the applicant team and their tenacity. It is a complicated site to develop, so it will be a little bit of time, I think. There's a lot.
My impression.
Environmental
Freely, if that- is that
Sure,
okay?
go ahead. We're hashing it out, so.
But you got to turn your microphone on so everybody else can hear.
Okay, I won't do it too heavy, but I'm telling you, I've been in front of a lot of public bodies. It's nice to get constructive feedback. I think the project will be better because of this. I've never heard a public body say, make it funkier and cooler. That's like I looked at Judy, I said, you ever heard, like, this is gonna be awesome. Thank you. I think that all the, everything was really constructive. I'm excited to come back. I would, but I defer to Brian. To me, it is it's gonna be a minute. There's a lot of departments to coordinate. I'd prefer to keep this thing moving. There is no way this is moving forward without coming back here once, maybe twice. My point is that let's keep the other processes moving in a parallel path. I share my friend's confidence that we're gonna get this thing right, but I don't think we need to sort of like bump up against this before we go to the next one. But I defer. No, I don't know, John, what do you think?
I think we'll come back for sure.
Come back. Excuse me, we want to come back.
Well,
We want you to come back.
Okay,
Mr.
that
Chair.
would be lovely if we
Yes.
can continue back
Okay,
to
all right,
HLC.
we're gonna bring it back to the commission now.
Yes. So, Mr. Chair, yes, so,
There's a Vitruvian man.
yeah.
All right.
We now have a hammer that we can hit you
Yeah,
with.
my son Gabriel carved that on there for us. Awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
Commissioner Uli put that into HLC's.
It's part of
forever
our
box.
new history.
Yeah.
At any rate,
All right,
I think,
Commissioner Uli.
just to clarify, the question from staff was, do we continue to Planning Commission or do we continue back to HLC? So would you prefer back to us first before you go to Planning Commission?
Yeah, I think we should.
All right, then the motion is to continue indefinitely back to the HLC.
Which is okay with the
All right.
seconder.
Okay, with the first and second, under discussion, any discussion? All right, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Thank you, Chair Grumbine. I'll take the roll call vote. Commissioner Drury,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensberg,
Yes?
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Lundvik,
Yes.
Commissioner Uli,
Yes.
Vice Chair House,
Yes.
and Chair Grumbine.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you.
Thank you
guys.
all.
All right,
That was
thank you. All right, and I think we're gonna take a 10-minute recess.
No. Are you from up there, Richard?
No,
Oh, okay.
Are we ready? All right, calling back to the Historic Landmarks Commission, April 12th. All right, so we are on to item 6, archaeology report for Oak Park.
If you're presenting, come on up.
638, yeah, come on up. This is for the archaeology report. And this is listed in the Historic Resources Inventory, constructed in 1904, and site of the 1940 Juneteenth celebration. This is a proposal to restore a 1,800 linear foot reach of Mission Creek. Project includes creek bank restoration and planting over 5,000 native riparian trees, shrubs, and herbs. The Creeks Division is seeking secret review for the creek restoration activities. Request, and this is a request for acceptance of the Phase 1 archaeological resources prepared for the project by Christopher Duran of Rincon Consultants. The report has been reviewed by Dr. Glassow, who agrees with its conclusions and recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and staff has one brief announcement before we
Yes, please.
get into it. So in addition to Dr. Glassow agreeing with the conclusions and recommendations, he specified that he agrees with that earth-moving activities should be monitored to ensure that no cultural resources are further damaged, given that their presence was reported in the 1920s by David B. Rogers. And he also noticed a typographical error on page 4, west and north should be reversed. And that is all.
All right.
Be more careful next time.
Makes a big difference.
Well, it's amazing how many times people look at a report and things still
Yeah.
get through, you know?
Same with architectural plans.
All right, so with that, if you would, preparers of the report.
Sure. Do you want to go ahead and talk?
Introduce yourself.
Yeah, introduce yourselves for the record, and then give us a brief summary and any other commentary you want to do, and then we'll
Okay.
from there.
I'm Tim Burgess. I am a planner with the Creeks Division, and this is, I'm presenting this project, or I'm the project manager for the Oak Park, Mission Creek restoration at Oak Park, which is a small restoration project involving restoring the banks and planting of native plants. And so along with that is this cultural resources evaluation. And Rincon Consulting did that, and they're here to present findings.
Great. All right.
Afternoon, Commissioners.
Yeah.
Afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Ken Victorino. I'm Senior Principal Investigator with Rincon, kind of overseeing the archaeological investigation for the project. 20-plus years of experience with different companies in the city.
Good afternoon. My name is Matthew Gonzalez. I'm a senior archaeologist and project manager with Rincon, and I worked with Chris and Ken on this project, kind of doing the heavy lifting and background stuff, and then with their support.
Okay, great. And do you guys want to summarize your, oh, go ahead.
Is that green light on?
Yeah. Yes.
All right. And so do you want to summarize your findings?
Yeah, we for this project, as you mentioned, we did the archaeological report, and that consisted of a record search through the CCIC, the Central Coast.
There you go.
There we go. Yeah, we did an archaeological resource report, and that consisted of record search through the Central Coast Information Center, a sacred lands file search through the Native American Heritage Commission, review of some historic maps and aerial imagery, and as well as a pedestrian survey of the property. And the only thing that came up was the 1920s archaeological site, or the archaeological site that was recorded in the 1920s that was mentioned above. And that site was also updated in the 1960s. There was no superficial artifacts that were found during that update. And we also didn't find any, see anything during our pedestrian survey. The second resource that was found was the Oak Park itself. And so we summarized some of the previous findings for that, the park. As far as the project goes, I don't know if Tim wants to elaborate more on what it is, but there's going to be restoration of certain areas of the creek and some stabilizations of the banks. And the likelihood of cultural resources or subsurface archaeological resources being found as part of the project is very low. But per the MEA of the city, the we did recommend archaeological and tribal monitoring, as Dr. Glasshow mentioned. And we also had some provisions in there for unanticipated archaeological finds and human remains, just in case they come up. As you mentioned earlier, Glasshow agreed with our recommendations and conclusions, and that typographical error that he found has since been corrected. And
Great.
that's it.
All right, thank you. All right, that concludes your report on the report. We'll go to public comment on this item, on the archaeology report. So anyone in the room, seeing as there's only one person in the room, do you want to talk? All right, so
Thank you, Chair Grumbine. I do not have any speaker slips. We do not have any virtual participants, and no written correspondence was submitted. So back to the chair.
all right, thanks. All right, back to the commission. Any questions on the archaeology report? Nope, okay. In that case, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the report as submitted,
Second.
with the correction of the typo, of course.
It was correct.
All right, and a second by Commissioner Uli. Under discussion, any other discussion? All right, roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Chair Grumbine. I'll take the roll call vote. Commissioner Drury,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Lundvik,
Yes.
Commissioner Uli,
Yes.
Vice Chair House.
Yes.
And Chair Grumbine.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, and we are now on to the last item of the day. It is item 7. This is the, for concept, new items for concept review. This is Oak Park, 638 West Junipero Street. It's listed on the Historic Resources Inventory, constructed in 1904, and site of the 1940 Juneteenth celebration. Proposal to restore a 1,800 linear foot reach of Mission Creek Reach. Project includes creek bank restoration and planting of over 5,000 native riparian trees, shrubs, and herbs. The Creeks Division is seeking CEQA review for the creek restoration activities. No final appealable action will be take place at this meeting. Project compatibility findings and minor alterations findings will be required for project design approval. All right, so with that, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself again. And there was a historic significance report. Was there any presentation about it, or are we good?
I do have the report available if you'd like to go through it. Nicole's not here to present it, as the historic significance isn't really affected by this project.
Yeah,
But,
okay, okay, great. So if anyone does want to bring it up or have it, then they can bring it up, so. All right, okay, if you could go through your presentation, and you'll have 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Commissioners. Appreciate the opportunity to come here and present this. I'm not going to take up 15 minutes, but, as I said before.
There's 5,000 species you could go through.
Yeah, so this is a small restoration project. The goal of the project is to restore riparian habitat, improve creek banks, remove some failed concrete elements that were put into the creek years ago, to improve flow, improve hydraulic function of the creek and hydrologic function, and then provide more space on the banks for plantings of native plants and trees and herbs. And then while also maintaining the existing mature tree population in Oak Park. And so these are the design plans. I'll skip to the end, showing the planting areas, the restoration planting areas. You can see, so Mission Creek is that dashed blue line running through. Talent Road is on the right side. Junipero is on the left side. And so you can see the planted areas. We have a list of the plants that we're going to be using. These are riparian plants, a lot of riparian trees, and then shrubs and herbs. And so along this route, so you can see that a lot of that is under the existing canopy, oak sycamore canopy that is there right now, and then on the banks, and that's what we'd be planting
And then for specific areas, there's a swale that comes off of, comes through Oak Park that runs from Talent Road, and that's been eroded a bit, and so we would put in bioengineering techniques and plant more plants to keep that from being eroded more. There's another area on the creek where there is a concrete, there's a bouldered riprap that is or concreted riprap that we are proposing to remove because it's, we want to plant that with a natural bank. And then there's another area where there's a sackcrete wall on the creek, and we're not sure exactly what the function of that was, but to enable that creek, to restore the meander of the creek, we want to remove that vertical sackcrete wall and lay that bank back while preserving the native trees that are right there as well. And then along with that, there's, as I said, planting as many native plants in there as we can in those areas. And then also managing the site for, in those riparian areas, managing that site for, to support the native trees and shrubs.
Okay.
Okay.
Does that conclude your presentation?
That does conclude my presentation.
All right. In that case, let's go to public comment. Oops. Any member of the public still not wanting to comment? All right, we'll go to online, or not online, but virtual.
Thank you, Chair Grumbine. I do not have any speaker slips. We do not have any virtual participants, and we did not receive written correspondence. So back to the commission.
All right, great. All right, to the commission for questions.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. So where's the tennis court? Does that,
You can see the tennis court is just off Talent Road.
Right.
And so it is, it's not really in the project area.
okay.
Yeah.
Not that I play tennis, I just wondered if there was some.
Can you hover over
Oh,
it, though?
is.
Can
Yeah,
you
there
see it
is.
there?
Yeah, it's right here.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
right here, yeah.
Yeah.
And, yeah, these are this is the restoration. It's not, we're not interfering with the tennis court at all.
I just wondered if there'd been any damage from this winter we've had.
No, there's not really been damage to the tennis court. I mean, as in a lot of the creeks, we had really high flows, and, the beds in the creeks changed. Boulders moved, cobbles moved around.
Noisily.
New bars formed. Yeah, but not too much damage, no.
Good.
And so,
Good.
yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
been interesting.
Thank you.
Pickleball damage.
Pickleball. No.
All right, other questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have a question. I must admit, I sit at the picnic tables, which are close to the street. But there's a lot of lawn in that park. Are you putting lawn back in some of these areas that are being expanded or restored or built up?
For the most part, we really want to leave those kind of passive recreation lawn areas alone. There's one spot where the creek is really close to that lawn area up here, and we're envisioning a strip of native vegetation right there, because the bank's pretty steep when it goes off right there, and so when you have lawn that goes right up to the creek and people walking, you tend to have a little more erosion and compaction of the soil, and so in order to plant native plants that help stabilize that bank and support that and support the creek structure there, we want to plant a thin strip right here, but it would still be, there'd be plenty of room for frisbee golf and things like that. So, and then, so as I said, a lot of the other restoration areas would be under the existing canopy, and there's not really grass where grass doesn't really grow too well.
It tries.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Any other questions?
Chair Grumbine, yes, I have a question. So if I understand correctly, that when you're talking about restoration, you're meaning restoration of the creek as a natural element. So you're taking away, there's some concrete swales or concrete banks or something like that that are, and also you mentioned Sac Creek walls. So those elements are being removed, and then the natural creek would be restored with the native plantings. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's right, yeah. And it's really, yeah, a couple spots. That one is that Saccrete wall. It's a vertical Saccrete wall.
And do you have pictures of that?
Yeah, I do. I brought a picture in. It's not online, but here's a.
It's okay, it still exists.
There you go.
Yeah. Yep. So City TV, could you zoom in here?
So the idea with
This is the Saccrete wall?
That's the Saccrete wall. And that's looking downstream. So the Saccrete wall on the left. And you can see where the creek, this was taken, during the base flow, winter base flow. And so the creek is really, on the other side of the Saccrete wall, you've got steeper bank. And so the creek gets really constricted at this point. And so removing that Saccrete wall and giving more room for that creek flows on the bank would really improve the hydraulic function of the creek right there, and then be able to restore that with more room for native plants and things like that, and also make it a little easier to get down to the creek in that spot for people, for animals, for anything.
Okay.
Question.
Thank you.
Will that take out the metal fencing that's there too? I'm
Yes.
assuming it'll kind of clear all that.
Yeah, there's a steel pole fence that I guess was put in there because it's a good drop. It's like a 6 or 7 foot drop. And so, yeah, we would take out that fence.
So then this side we're looking at would gradually be graded down to look, I guess, maybe a little bit more like what we see on the right-hand side, so it'd be gradually going up to that other elevation? Is that?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's it.
Okay.
That's right.
Cool.
Yeah.
Make a proper bank.
Very nice, thank you.
All right.
Oh, that was, are we questions?
We're still questions. No. All right. Any other questions? And I guess my last question would be, is this like inspired by Irving Gill?
Oh, no.
Sorry, wait, wrong.
Gill-esque.
Gill-esque. Okay, comments? Any comments?
Mr. Chair.
Everyone supportive? Yep.
Eminently supportable. It's a wonderful park. Thank you.
I support it too. I think it's really great, and I'm glad to see this kind of work happening and support more of it. We're not making any motions for this. This is just.
This is no final appealable action. So I think, I guess,
We continue it back to ourselves.
yeah, do we just continue it for?
Correct. This is here for concept review. It's in review for completeness right now. So when it's deemed complete, it can return to you for project design approval and
And
final
it could
approval.
go to consent.
Yeah, and so I guess we could also make a motion that it is, that it is making, whatever, that it's in good shape to be approved once, and then, yeah, send it back on consent. Does that sound like?
Yeah, that we're ready for
So
it
do
to
you
go.
want a motion?
The agenda is for PDA.
Can it get, I'm assuming the answer is yes, it can get project compatibility and final on consent.
Correct.
Totally
Yes,
fine,
Yes,
right?
if you feel like
Okay.
this doesn't need to be heard at the full commission, you can continue indefinitely to consent. And when it's deemed complete, it will go for project design and final.
Okay.
We don't want to see landscape samples and,
Only 4,000 of them.
Plantings.
The first 4,000.
Plantings, you want some
We'll
plantings?
trust you on the last 1,000.
three in a box out in the driveway.
Bring boulder samples
It's been a
in.
long day, Tim.
Yeah. Okay, so who wants to make a motion then?
I'll move to approve it for final on consent.
No, to
Continue indefinitely.
to continue it and with comments that it's
Okay,
yeah, that
to
it's-
continue with the comments that have been made today, and to come back for final on consent.
And
PDA
and the comments would be, just to clarify, would be that we find this project very approvable
Supportable.
and very supportable, and are enthusiastic about the city doing this for and restoring the creek.
I'll second.
All right. Maker of the motion, okay with that? Yeah, I realized I hadn't actually verbalized the comments fully. Okay, make sure maker of the motion is okay with that? Okay, and seconder's okay with that? All right, under discussion, any other discussion? All right, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Thank you, Chair Grumline. I'll take the roll call vote. Commissioner Butler?
Yes.
Commissioner Lundvik?
Yes.
Commissioner Uli?
Yes.
Commissioner Drury?
Yes.
Commissioner Ensberg?
Yes.
Vice Chair House?
Yes.
And Chair Grumline.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great project.
Thank you.
All right, and so now we are adjourned.
Wow.
Just like.